Chapter 412. Swish, as the muscular and slender figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu, he waved his hand and sent a claw towards the azure gold longsword in Du Xiaofu's hand. He wanted to snatch the azure gold longsword from Du Xiaofu's hand. Swish, however, just as the claw was about to grab the azure gold longsword in Du Xiaofu's hand, the space around Du Xiaofu seemed to have been torn apart. Following which, a lithe and beautiful figure appeared in an instant as a terrifying pressure descended. This pressure was clearly much stronger than the pressure from the muscular and slender figure. At this moment, the muscular and slender figure seemed to have sensed something, and a look of astonishment quickly appeared on his face. The claw that was grabbing towards Du Xiaofu's azure gold longsword also involuntarily froze. As the lithe and beautiful figure appeared, an ethereal and domineering voice instantly resounded in this world. "You dare to snatch my brother? You're courting death." The ethereal and domineering voice rang out and swept across the sky above Tianwu Academy like a sudden clap of thunder. The voice seemed to contain a terrifying pressure that caused the meridians and souls in everyone's body to tremble and their profound energy to be blocked. Within the mountains, tens of thousands of beasts could not help but prostrate on the ground. When the lithe and beautiful figure appeared, she seemed to be able to affect time. She stretched out her fair and slender hand and clenched it into a fist. Mysterious green talisman runes erupted from her fist, solidifying and suppressing the entire sky. A noble aura spread throughout the world as her fist directly smashed against the claw of the muscular and slender figure. What a powerful beast race expert! The muscular and slender figure was astonished. The lithe and beautiful girl who suddenly appeared clearly had the aura of a beast race expert. Under such a terrifying aura, the pressure caused the profound energy in his body to stagnate and his meridians and souls to not dare to move. What kind of beast race expert was this to be so terrifying and powerful? The fist of the lithe and beautiful figure directly collided with the claw of the muscular and beautiful figure. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Bang! The fist and claw collided, causing the air to tremble. The space rippled like a huge wave and the runes were dazzling to the eye. Swish, following which, a terrifying green light burst out amidst the dazzling runes and poured down on the muscular and slender figure's claw. It was unstoppable. Pucci! The terrifying force poured down and the muscular and slender figure's eyes were filled with horror. Blood continued to spurt out from his mouth as he was unable to Qin Chang's attack. He couldn't resist the force and his body was sent flying like a cannonball before him. His body was smashed into the rubble in the valley. Boom! The earth quaked and the mountains shook. Broken rocks shot up into the sky. The tall and muscular figure was blasted into the pile of broken rocks and disappeared. The graceful figure stood in the air. Her green dress was decorated with silver threads, and the hem of her dress fluttered in the wind. Her ethereal eyes twinkled like stars, and her eyelashes fluttered softly, like a budding lotus flower. Her temperament was elegant, pure, and innocent, and exuded unparalleled nobility. When this sight appeared, everyone in Tianwu Academy stared blankly at the sky. Regardless of whether they were elders, instructors, students, or right-in students, everyone in Tianwu Academy stared at one another and gasped in shock. That's Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaofu's younger sister. Other than deep shock, everyone looked as though they had seen a ghost. Who else could the green figure who suddenly made a move be other than the frail and innocent younger sister of Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoqing? To be able to knock down a martial king expert with a single punch, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds. To think that such strength would come from the younger sister of Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoqing, who usually followed behind him. This sight was simply too shocking. Gu Gu, not far away, Han Chao, Bing Na, Tu Tong, and Zhang Lu, who were usually close to Du Xiaoqing, were all staring at the green figure in the sky and swallowing their saliva. Within the rubble on the ground, the slender and well-built figure rushed out from the rubble and soared into the sky in an incomparably miserable manner. He did not dare to stay any longer. In an instant, he appeared in the distant sky and hurriedly fled. However, just as that person appeared in the sky, a deep and cold laughter resounded in the sky. I intentionally let you enter so easily. Do you think that I can let you leave so easily? I'll use you as a warning to others. The moment those words were spoken, a blade ray appeared in the sky. The clouds surged as energy rippled through the air and runes filled the sky. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the crowd, the blade ray slashed down on that slender and muscular figure. It was as fast as lightning, and it was impossible for the slender and muscular figure to resist. Swoosh swoosh. The blade ray sliced through the air, and the slender and muscular figure's head was separated from his body like a withered weed under the horrified gazes of the crowd. With a single slash, the slender and muscular figure's body was split into two and his head was separated from his body. Under the corrosion of the mysterious runes on the blade ray, the slender and muscular figure's body exploded in the sky. A bloody mist filled the sky, and an extraordinary martial king expert fell in Tianmu Academy. Looking at the scene in the sky, all the students of Tianmu Academy sucked in a breath of cold air and trembled in fear. Our Tianmu Academy has a hidden expert as well. The general, Gue Hua, Gu Xinyan, Li Yuxiao, and the rest sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at each other in shock. The martial king expert who came to snatch the treasure was definitely not a simple martial king. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to barge into Tianmu Academy. However, that extraordinary martial king had been killed with a single strike. Just how terrifyingly strong was the hidden expert in the Celestial Martial Academy? If he was only slightly stronger, it would be impossible for him to kill the slender and muscular figure in a single move. Due to the previous incident, the entire sky fell silent. Everyone stared blankly at the sky. Tianmu Academy has forged a powerful weapon. If you have the capability, come and snatch it from us. If you don't, kill all of you. I would like to see who dares to snatch it from us. Following the death of the martial king expert, Ling Ju's roar reverberated throughout Tianmu Academy. His voice was filled with incomparable killing intent and Ling Ju's killing intent. In the dark forest outside Tianmu Academy, several figures floated in the air. They looked in the direction of Tianmu Academy with twitching eyes. Eventually, their faces twitched and they turned around to leave reluctantly. However, they didn't stay for long. Pucci. To Du Xiaofu, the scene that had just happened was like a dream. For some reason, Du Xiaofu's vision had already become blurry. However, his hand was still tightly gripping the azure gold longsword. In the end, he controlled the azure gold longsword with his mind, directly turning it into a talisman that was stored in his divine gate. After that, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Buzz buzz. Almost at the same time, on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body, there were only a few arcs of lightning shuttling back and forth. All of a sudden, countless arcs of lightning burst out from his body. In a short instant, Du Xiaofu's entire body was wrapped in lightning, like a silver snake shuttling back and forth, like a lightning ball. Peng 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 peng. All of a sudden, countless lightning bolts exploded on Du Xiaofu's body. Bloody holes appeared one after another and a terrifying aura was released. In the end, his body fell from the sky like a bird with broken wings. Brother. Du Xiaoqing's face turned pale. Suddenly, a green light wrapped around Du Xiaofu's body and supported him. Let us see. In midair, three old figures appeared. They were the Great Elder, the Second Elder, and the Third Elder. In a quiet courtyard, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged on a bed. His eyes were closed and his face was as pale as ash. Behind him, the Great Elder was also sitting cross-legged. His hand seals changed one after another and waves of runic energy landed on Du Xiaofu's body. Buzz buzz. The surface of Du Xiaofu's body was still occasionally flashing with lightning. There were quite a number of bloody holes on his body. At this moment, his blood had already dried up. The skin that had been blasted apart by the bloody holes was gradually showing signs of recovery. Buzz buzz. As the Grand Elder's hand seals landed on Du Xiaofu's body seemed to possess some sort of rebounding force. It directly collided with the Grand Elder's hand seals and repelled him. Buzz buzz. At the same time, a mysterious light began to bloom from young Master Du's bloody body. The mysterious light seemed a little turbid and dim, but it was tightly connected to his meridians and blood vessels. In the end, it directly intertwined and condensed together. A terrifying power spread out and turned into a looming light net. It directly covered Du Xiaofu's body and devoured the lightning bolts on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body. The lightning radiance was like a delicacy to the mysterious light net. It greedily devoured the lightning radiance. Then, the mysterious light net slowly dissipated along with an ancient aura that spread out. Incredible, really incredible. The first elder jumped off the bed and looked at Du Xiaofu, who was still sitting cross-legged and had yet to awaken. His eyes widened in shock. Chapter 413. First Elder, how is Du Xiaofu? Elder Liao immediately asked the first elder. At this moment, other than Elder Liao, Murongxi, Sun Biyue, and the other elders were also in the room. Ouyang Shuang, Du Xiaoqing, and Du Xiaoyao were also present. The first elder looked at Du Xiaofu in shock and said, "The martial vein spiritual seal. He has the martial vein spiritual seal protecting him. Even a peak martial king realm expert would find it difficult to withstand the power of 3.5 stars of thunder calamity. However, Du Xiaofu was able to withstand it. It should be related to the martial vein spiritual seal in his body. His martial vein spiritual seal seems to have a special effect on the power of thunder and lightning, being able to devour the power of thunder and lightning. However, I don't know what will happen to him." The martial vein spiritual seal. When Murongxi, Elder Liao, Elder Sun Biyue, and the others heard this, their eyes trembled. The martial vein spiritual seal was something that only existed in legends. Only the people of the legendary great clans would have the martial vein spiritual seal. How could Du Xiaofu have such a terrifying thing on him? Let him rest. When he wakes up, we will ask him about the situation. The first elder said to the crowd, "This time, he has successfully refined a peak high-ranked Dao artifact. It won't take long for him to shock everyone. The academy must be prepared to prevent others from coveting it." Yes. Murongxi, Elder Liao, and the others nodded and followed the first elder out of the room. In the end, only Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, and Ouyang Shuang were left in the room. Qi, a small pagoda floated out from Du Xiaofu's chest. Then, Zhen Qingquan's illusory figure appeared before the eyes of the three people. He carefully examined Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed with his eyes closed and his breathing weak. "Brother Qingchun, how is he?" Ouyang Shuang asked Zhen Qingchun. The three people present were not surprised by Zhen Qingchun. Zhen Qingchun looked at him carefully and replied to everyone, "He should be fine. His physical body is strong, and most of the power of the thunder tribulation seems to have been absorbed by something. He is just extremely weak. Coupled with the impact of the thunder tribulation, he fell into a coma. However, he seems to be adjusting his breathing and recovering on his own. He should be fine." Phew, Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaoqing were relieved to hear that. As time passed, the students of Tianwu Academy were still in a state of shock. In the outside world, news of the lightning calamity descending upon Tianwu Academy and someone successfully forging a treasure spread like wildfire. In just a few days, the news had already shocked the surrounding empires. It's actually Du Xiaofu's 3.5 stars thunder tribulation. It's possible that what he refined was a peak high-grade Dao artifact. This is truly incredible. It's that Du Xiaofu again. Where did this kid come from? How astonishing! The various powers in the surrounding empires received the news, and in an instant, Du Xiaofu's name shocked the surrounding empires once more, attracting the attention of many powers. In a vast and majestic palace, an emperor's aura could be vaguely felt from it. In a hall, a brawny man dressed in a dragon robe could be seen. Even though there were no ripples of aura coming from his body, no one dared to look at him directly. His disposition was imposing, and he muttered, "To think that it would be Du Xiaofu again." In the majestic hall, dragons and phoenixes were engraved on it. There were several elders and brawny men seated in the hall. It's at least a peak high-grade Dao artifact. To think that Du Xiaofu would have such attainments in smithing. Just his mastery as a talisman master is sufficient to shock the world. He's an outstanding talent, and his talisman Dao is astonishing. I didn't expect that an extraordinary person would appear in the clan of Shicheng. He's even stronger than his father, Du Tingxian. This kid is no ordinary person. He will definitely soar into the sky. This time, he even refined a peak high-grade Dao artifact. If my Du family doesn't do anything, I'm afraid that other forces will beat us to it. At that time, it will be a huge blow to my Du family. No matter what, we absolutely cannot allow that brat to enter our Du clan. Back then, Du Tingxian stirred up a monstrous calamity, causing our Du clan to nearly be annihilated. Don't tell me that all of you don't remember what happened. That's right. A few elders of my Du family are still recuperating from their injuries. Du Xiaofu has a grudge with those powerful forces. If he gets involved with our Du family, I'm afraid that we'll suffer another calamity. In the hall, many experts were in a heated discussion. A brawny man with distinct facial features was quietly listening by the side. Suddenly, he looked at the crowd in the hall and said, "Everyone, even if we allow Du Xiaofu to return to the Du family, will he be willing to do so?" Ever since he came to Tianwu Academy, he hasn't contacted Yun Xian or Du Qi. I'm afraid that he has no intention of returning to the Du family. Perhaps that kid already knows about what happened back then and is still holding a grudge against our Du family. As the brawny man's words fell, the clamor in the hall instantly died down. Many gazes flickered. Our Du family had no choice back then. That kid shouldn't blame our Du family, right? An elder sighed with a helpless look in his eyes. What right does that kid have to blame our Du family? We're the main family while he's just a kid from a branch family. Do you think that he can rebel? A brawny man said coldly with disdain in his eyes. The burly man with well-defined facial features looked at the crowd. His gaze trembled slightly and was filled with worry. He continued, "I'm afraid that at this time, someone will make a big fuss about what happened back then and make that kid hate our Du family. He will become a dangerous bomb that will explode at any time." Humph. That brat is a member of the Du family's branch family. If he really dares to use his decent talent to commit treason and harm the main family, then just kill him directly. A majestic old man snorted. His eyes were shining with a cold light. The moon rose into the sky above the bamboo forest, causing the bamboo forest to seem to be shrouded in smoke. It was as though a dream had descended. Sitting on a bamboo rattan chair, under the moonlight, was an old man with a skinny and dark face. His bright eyes flashed, revealing a look of shock. He muttered softly, "This kid is really more shocking than the last time. Grandfather, do we need to do anything now?" A lady dressed in a light blue dress with a thin veil draped over her body stood beside the elder. Her waist was slender and her skin was supple. She exuded a seductive aura that seemed to have no bones. There's no need to do anything. The Du family and the royal palace must be very lively right now. Let's just watch the show. There's no need for us to interfere. The elder smiled as he continued lying on the bamboo chair. Looking at the lady, he smiled and said, "Lass, why don't you make a trip to Tianwu Academy and bring that kid back to our Xia family? Becoming the son-in-law of the Xia family isn't a bad idea. Even though he's a little young, it won't be a problem if you're older. You'll be able to help him in the future." "Grandfather, you're doing it again. If you continue like this, I really won't come to see you anymore." The lady stared at the elder with her beautiful eyes. Her bashful expression gave her a unique charm. "All right, I won't talk about it anymore, all right?" The old man smiled. The moonlight shone through the gaps in the bamboo forest and shone on his dark face, casting mottled shadows. After pausing for a moment, the wrinkles on his face fluctuated as he softly said, "I'm just saying. I really think that kid is not bad. However, with that kid's current reputation, I'm afraid that there will be many little girls around him. If that kid is young and naive and falls for that little girl's trick, that would be a pity." "Grandfather, are you complaining that I'm not married yet?" The lady's beautiful eyes were filled with cleverness. The night breeze in the bamboo forest caressed her, causing a few strands of her hair to fall to her waist. It felt as though they were being carried away by the wind. That's not what I meant. It's just that there isn't a single young man in the empire who is worthy of my granddaughter. The elder stood up. Wearing a plain robe, he looked as though a bamboo pole was carrying a cloth bag. His skinny chest was pressed against his robe, and he stretched his back lazily, causing others to worry that his waist would break if he wasn't careful. He said softly, "The Du clan intends to form a marriage alliance with our Xia clan, and the old man of the Du clan has mentioned it to me several times. The young fellow whom the Du clan has been concealing is indeed extraordinary. However, I don't wish to let my granddaughter suffer in such a marriage alliance. Thus, no matter how I look at it, I still feel that that kid isn't bad, other than the fact that he's a little too young." The lady supported the elder with a smile. She didn't say anything else, but her eyes were filled with an alluring radiance. 10 days later, early in the morning, Tianwu Academy was bathed in the glow of the morning sun, painting the mountains in a faint golden hue. In a solitary courtyard in the Blacksmith Institute, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged with a broadsword slung behind his back. The faint golden halo enveloping his body was slowly receding, and his ashen complexion had unknowingly regained its redness. The energy of the golden halo was like a golden spirit snake as it mysteriously drilled into Du Xiaofu's body. After the last wisp of golden energy drilled into Du Xiaofu's body, Du Xiaofu's eyelashes trembled slightly as his tightly shut eyes opened. Chi, 2 streaks of golden light shot out from his eyes, and a domineering aura gushed out from his skinny yet sturdy body, causing the entire room to tremble. "It's good that you're fine. You really went overboard this time." A wretched face appeared before Du Xiaofu's eyes. He looked to be around 16 to 17 years old, and his body was illusory. He had triangular eyes, a fierce-looking face, and inverted eyebrows. It was hard for anyone to identify with him. "Who?" Du Xiaofu spat out a mouthful of turbid air from his mouth. On his resolute face, the radiance in his eyes retracted and turned back into a clear and bright one. Looking at the wretched face in front of him, he smiled and said, "Brother Qing Chun, how long have I been unconscious and doing breathing exercises for?" "Around 10 days, Jin Qing Chun replied. That face was hard to identify with. If it wasn't Jin Qing Chun, there was no one else. Chapter 4:14. Has it been so long? Hearing this, Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. He did not expect it to be so long. Then, he asked Jin Qing Chun, "How is the situation outside?" "I didn't go out, so I don't know." "But your elder sister Du Xiaoman has returned from Stone City," Jin Qing Chun said to Du Xiaofu. Outside the courtyard, surrounded by mountains and water, was a lush green. In the pavilion, a woman with a hot body leaned against a wooden pillar, outlining a graceful and moving arc. Her long black hair was as smooth as a waterfall, loosely tied up. She had a pair of slender long legs, which seemed to be silently enchanting. Her chest was like white jade, half covered. She raised her eyes and looked into the depths of the mountain stream. Her figure was graceful, her eyes were ethereal, and her lips were like cherry petals. She whispered, "Fortunately, third brother is fine. If father and second uncle know that you have refined a high-grade peak Dao item, they will definitely be wild with joy. Elder sister, bring me to Stone City next time. I want to go too." Du Xiaoqing was interested. Her temperament was pure and innocent, elegant and pure. "Okay, let's go back together next time." Du Xiaoman smiled slightly, elegant and refined. Her dark eyes were as clear as a stream. "Are you not going to bring me?" Oh, Yang Shuang stared at Du Xiaoqing and Du Xiaoman, her large eyes rippling. "How about I bring you?" A faint, familiar voice sounded. Then, a purple-robed figure carrying a broad sword on his back walked over. "Brother." Du Xiaoqing looked up and immediately pounced over happily, immediately holding Du Xiaofu's arm intimately. The person who came was indeed Du Xiaofu. After freshening up in his room and changing into a clean set of robes, he came to find the 3 girls. "Is everything all right?" Oh, Yang Shuang also came to Du Xiaofu's side. Her graceful figure was moving. Her large eyes were always cold to others, but at this moment, facing Du Xiaofu, they were full of worry. "It's fine, don't worry." Du Xiaofu looked at Ouyang Shuang, somewhat puzzled. "Why do I feel that you are becoming more and more like a woman?" "I'm just asking, who has time to care about you?" Ouyang Shuang glared at Du Xiaofu, then directly walked away. "Did I offend this tomboy again?" Du Xiaofu's face was puzzled, he scratched his head, extremely puzzled. "It's good that you're fine. Brat, you just came out of the heavenly martial talisman realm, and you've already caused such a big commotion. Fortunately, you're fine." Du Xiaoman stood up and walked forward with small steps. There was a charming smile on her face, which was extremely moving. "Big sister, have you returned from Stone City? How is your family?" Du Xiaofu had already heard from Zhen Qingchun that his big sister, Du Xiaoman, had returned from Stone City. It wasn't strange for him to see her now, but he was still worried about his family. After all, Stone City was the place where he grew up. "Everything is fine at home. When the elders found out about your results in Tianwu Academy, they were especially happy. When the residents of Stone City heard that you, the Vice City Lord, shone brilliantly in Tianwu Academy, the entire city cheered for you." Du Xiaoman pursed her lips and smiled. Du Xiaofu chuckled. He had almost forgotten that he was still the Vice City Lord of Stone City. Although it was just a title and he didn't have to do anything, he really missed the Du family and Stone City. Back then, he had walked out of Stone City, the place where he had grown up. "I didn't expect you to be the Vice City Lord. Truly unexpected." Ouyang Shuang teased from the side. There was clearly some disdain in her large eyes. "It's just a small city. It can't be compared to Lonling City," Du Xiaofu said helplessly. Back then, the Stone City Lord, Yi Baolin, was unwilling to refuse. Since he didn't have to do anything, it didn't matter if he was just a title. Du Xiaofu had no choice but to agree to be the Vice City Lord. "Xiaofu, I have something to tell you. It's about the Du household," Du Xiaoman said. "Big sister, just say it here. There are no outsiders here." Du Xiaofu nodded. Du Xiaoqing and Ouyang Shuang were definitely not outsiders. "N." Du Xiaoman nodded, then said to Du Xiaofu, "This time when I went back, I specifically asked eldest uncle and second uncle about the situation of the Du household. The Du household is indeed related to our Shur City's Du family, and they are also related to the main family." From big sister Du Xiaoman, Du Xiaofu learned that many years ago, there were two amazing characters in the Du family. At that time, there was a turmoil in the Stone City. One of them proposed to leave Stone City and develop outside. The other one followed the teachings of the ancestors and stayed in the ancestral land. In the end, the majority of the Du family wanted to go out and explore the world. They left Stone City and established themselves. Along with the Qing family of the Stone Dragon Empire, they conquered the current Stone Dragon Empire and were conferred the title of King Protector. They became the #1 imperial household in the Stone Dragon Empire. Over the years, it was said that the Stone Dragon Empire had experienced many turmoil and changed many emperors, but the Du household was still the #1 imperial household. The title of King Protector was hereditary. It could be said that the Du family was on the same level as the Qing family in the Stone Dragon Empire. Because of the relationship between the Du family and the Stone City had received some special protection from the Du family since some time ago. However, it had been a long time, so no outsiders knew about this. Even the Du family and the Qing family didn't know. Stone City was a small border city, so it didn't attract too much attention. These years, the status quo had been maintained until now. As for the Du family that stayed behind in Shur City, as time passed, they did not have many cultivation resources, and their talent was not as good as the previous generation. Their population was also relatively small, so they had always maintained their original state, and their strength could not be compared to the Du household. But Shur City's Du family had records that after the Du household left Shur City, every 3 years, the juniors from both sides would have a sparring session. Later on, for some unknown reason, the younger generation of the Du family became weaker with each generation. Thus, it evolved into a competition held every 3 years within the Du family. If the talent of the younger generation passed, they would be able to enter the Du household for training. In the end, no one from the Stone City's Du family came out. The Du royal residents even broke off all contact with the Stone City's Du family. About 20 years ago, Du Tingxian came out of the Stone City and displayed his astonishing talent in Tianwu Academy. He even became the champion of the Tianwu Assembly 20 years ago. Only then did he attract the attention of the Du royal residents. They once again contacted the Du family and Du Tingxian. It is said that later on, the relationship between second uncle and the Du household became very close. The Du household also sent people to the Du family to select talented juniors to enter the Du household. As for what happened after that, my father and second uncle are not clear. Stone City is far away and there isn't much information circulating. However, my father and second uncle said that when you and second uncle returned to Stone City, his body was covered in blood. However, second uncle never mentioned a word about this. My father and second uncle sent people to the Du household to inquire but were chased away by the Du household. After that, the Du household never contacted our Stone City's Du family again. Du Xiaoman finally said to Du Xiaofu. This time, when she returned to Stone City, she specially went to find out more about the Du household. This was all she knew. Could it be that the Du household is related to that matter? Listening to Du Xiaoman's words and calculating the time back then, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but suspect that the Du household might be related to those people who separated his family back then. Otherwise, with the Du household's strength and the close relationship between his drunkard father and the Du household, ordinary forces wouldn't dare to easily offend the Du household. At this time, I also heard some things. Yangshuang heard this and looked at Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoman. She hesitated for a while, then said, "Actually, I accidentally heard my father and mother say that the Du household was too unkind and felt that it was unfair for Uncle Tingxian. At that time, I was curious as to how the Du household and Uncle Tingxian could be related. Only now do I know that you are from the same family." "You only know this?" Du Xiaofu asked, frowning slightly. From Yangshuang's words, something must have happened between the Du household and the drunkard father. It could even be said that the Du household owed the drunkard father something. "I don't know much. If there is a need, you should go to Lonling City and ask my parents," Yangshuang said. "And?" Du Xiaofu nodded slightly. It seemed that if it was necessary, he would have to go to Lonling City and ask about the situation. Then, from Du Xiaoman's mouth, Du Xiaofu once again learned about the recent situation of the Du family and Stone City. Big sister Du Xiaoman also went to Lonling City and met with second brother Du Yunlong. She learned that the world society was developing very well in Lonling City and had already become a top force in Lonling City. "Where is Du Xiaoyao?" After chatting with his big sister, Yangshuang, and Du Xiaoqing for a long time, Du Xiaofu realized that Du Xiaoyao was actually not around. She seems to have gone to get some spiritual herbs. Every time, second brother would find a lot of spiritual herbs to eat. However, he told me not to tell anyone. Du Xiaoqing looked at Du Xiaofu with innocent eyes while Du Xiaoman and Yangshuang smiled. Every time Du Xiaoyao went out, she would be able to eat a lot of spiritual herbs. In her heart, her big brother and big sister Du Xiaoman were not outsiders and she could tell them. "Get some spiritual herbs." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was stunned for a moment before he smiled bitterly. The place where Du Xiaoyao went to get spiritual herbs, Du Xiaofu didn't even need to think to know that other than the herb field in Tianwu Academy, there was no other place. "Du Xiaofu, save me! Save me!" Just as Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the ground suddenly trembled and a golden ray of light shot out. The golden runes on the talisman flickered and turned into the figure of a golden monkey. In the end, it landed on Du Xiaofu's shoulder. It was Du Xiaoyao. However, at this moment, Du Xiaoyao's body was covered in dust. The fluctuation of her golden spirit eyes made her look pitiful. Those who did not know would really be deceived. They simply did not know how ferocious this fellow was behind this pitiful appearance. Chapter 4:15. Translator, H2DH2 Mr. What happened? Du Xiaofu frowned. He had a bad premonition. I was targeted. They actually shamelessly set up a trap in the medicinal herb field. Fortunately, I escaped quickly and they didn't discover who I was. However, 3 old fellows chased after me by following my aura. Du Xiaoyao said in a flustered and exasperated manner. It seemed that there was still some lingering anger in her heart. She didn't expect that those shameless fellows from the academy would actually set up a trap when she went to the medicinal herb field to get some spiritual herbs to satisfy her craving. Fortunately, she was talented enough to escape unscathed. Swoosh swoosh. Not long after Du Xiaoyao's voice sounded, 3 figures rushed over in the air with lightning-like speed. 3 vast and mighty auras surged, and 3 elderly figures immediately appeared in the sky above. First elder, second elder, third elder. Du Xiaofu's eyes widened. No wonder Du Xiaoyao wanted to escape. The ones who came to capture Du Xiaoyao were actually the 3 elders from the inner academy. Greetings to the 3 elders. Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaoman immediately bowed. After hearing Du Xiaoyao's words, they more or less understood the situation and immediately felt apprehensive. No need to be so courteous. The 3 elders' figures immediately descended, indicating that Du Xiaoman and Ouyang Shuang did not need to be so courteous. After which, the 3 elders looked at Du Xiaoqing with astonishment in their eyes. The strength that Du Xiaoqing had displayed not too long ago was sufficient to shock everyone in Tianmu Academy. Despite looking like a pure and innocent lass, she possessed terrifying strength. If she were to unleash her full potential, it would be no laughing matter. Greetings to the 3 elders. Du Xiaofu remained calm as he cupped his hands and bowed to the 3 elders. Did you see anyone passing by just now? The 3rd elder looked around but was unable to find anything. In the end, his gaze stopped on Du Xiaoyao, who was on Du Xiaofu's shoulder. However, Du Xiaoyao had completely retracted her aura and was pretending to be innocent as she looked at the clouds in the sky. Thus, the 3rd elder was unable to discover anything. No, we have been here all along and did not discover anything strange. Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoman, and Ouyang Shuang replied in unison. That's strange. Why did he run so quickly? The 2nd elder thought they were puzzled. They had clearly sensed Du Xiaoyao's aura. How are you? On the other hand, the 1st elder looked at Du Xiaofu and felt that Du Xiaofu's aura seemed to have recovered. He was surprised. First elders Lucas, elder Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaofu. That's good. The first elder was Du Xiaoyao Du Fong. Lin Du Boaz Luz's Lu was Lucas Fen. Du's FFF Du. Tu Du NN, so, the moment he finished his words, the 3 elders flew into the sky. It seemed as though they would not rest until they captured the thief. Who, seeing the 3 elders disappear into the distance, Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaoman heaved a sigh of relief. It won't be that easy to capture me. Du Xiaoyao watched the 3 elders leave with a gleam of satisfaction in her faint golden eyes. Du Xiaofu looked at Du Xiaoyao helplessly. In the end, he asked about the little tiger's situation. From Du Xiaoqing, he found out that the king-scaled demon tiger was still in seclusion for half a year. However, during this half a year, the little tiger had caused several huge commotion while it was in seclusion. That stupid tiger must have obtained a lot of benefits. It has been in seclusion for a long time and is unwilling to come out. 2 months ago, it caused a huge commotion. Its aura is not weak at all. I reckon it has already broken through to the Beast Lord realm with the help of the violent essence blood. Du Xiaoyao said to Du Xiaofu. I was planning to go check on the little tiger. Brother, do you want to come? Du Xiaoqing immediately asked Du Xiaofu. You guys go first. I'll go find you later. Du Xiaofu said after pondering for a moment. If it was as Du Xiaoyao said, that the little tiger had already reached the martial lord realm, then its progress was terrifying. The beast race's breakthroughs were originally not as good as human cultivators. For the little tiger to reach the beast lord realm so quickly was already terrifying enough. After a while, Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, Ouyang Shuang, and Du Xiaoman went to the back of the mountain to check on the little tiger's situation. Du Xiaofu left the courtyard to find Han Chao. Not long ago, the courtyard in the valley where Vice Dean Zhuge lived had already been razed to the ground. Only by finding Han Chao would he know where Vice Dean Zhuge was. Junior Du, are you alright? That's great. Junior Du, you are simply the pride of our weapon department. That day, you attracted 3.5 stars and almost 4 stars of lightning tribulation. Did you forge a peak high-grade Dao artifact? Junior Du, your aura seems to still be a bit weak. You have to take care of yourself. You mean the Vice Dean? He is recuperating in the courtyard not far away. That used to be the Vice Dean's residence. You can find him there. Under Han Chao's enthusiasm, Du Xiaofu finally managed to get the location of Vice Principal Zhuge from Han Chao's mouth. He immediately left. Although Du Xiaofu didn't dislike Senior Han Chao's enthusiasm at all, this kind of enthusiasm was too much for him to handle. In less than a quarter of an hour, Du Xiaofu arrived at a verdant mountain peak. A courtyard was covered in greenery. In a simple and unadorned stone room, Zhuge Qiangbang sat cross-legged. His large face was like a wasteland full of grass. His face was full of wrinkles, and he looked like a barbarian or an orangutan. Zhuge Qiangbang's old face was still rather pale at this moment, and his body was shrouded in a halo of runes. Phew, after a while, the halo of runes around his body disappeared. Zhuge Qiangbang opened his eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air from his stomach. Vice Dean, how are you? Du Xiaofu stood respectfully at the side and looked at Vice Dean Zhuge in front of him. He knew that Vice Dean Zhuge was seriously injured back then. I'm fine. It's just some old illness. You, on the other hand, resisted the lightning tribulation with your own strength. Are you alright? Vice Dean Zhuge stood up. His aura was rather weak. He looked at Du Xiaofu in front of him with shock in his eyes. This kid actually recovered so quickly and resisted the lightning tribulation with his physical body. If it were someone else, they probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed for a year or so. I'm fine now. Du Xiaofu replied. He only remembered that when he was struck by the power of lightning, his internal organs, bones, and muscles were all blasted into pieces. His mind was also struck by the lightning, causing him to feel dizzy. He simply could not remember the specific things that had happened back then. Du Xiaofu vaguely remembered, as if in a dream, that just as his body was about to be blasted apart, a mysterious and familiar power suddenly awakened in his body and helped him resist the terrifying power of the lightning. Now that he thought about it, Du Xiaofu sucked in a breath of cold air. Back then, he didn't want to see the Dao artifact destroyed, so he went all out. If he had known that the lightning tribulation was so terrifying, he wouldn't have dared to try it himself. You don't feel any discomfort, do you? Zhuge Qiangbang looked at Du Xiaofu in confusion. That kind of lightning tribulation was difficult for even a peak martial king to resist, but Du Xiaofu was completely fine. He couldn't help but feel that it was unbelievable. I should be fine. Du Xiaofu shook his head. If there was anything different about his body, it was that his martial veins seemed to have a more inexplicable feeling than before. That feeling was extremely mysterious and indescribable. Zhuge Qiangbang looked at Du Xiaofu. It seemed that this guy was completely fine. Then he said, "It's good that you're fine. You're lucky. Do you have the sword with you?" "Yes." Du Xiaofu nodded. With a shift of his mind, a ray of azure gold light surged in his hand. Then, a long azure gold sword appeared in his hand. Suddenly, a domineering and fierce aura filled the air, faintly emitting a sonorous sound. On the azure gold sword, azure gold runes flickered. The sword also emitted a faint azure gold light. It looked simple, but in fact, it was extremely agile. The arc of the sword was elegant, and the azure gold light shone. The runes flowed naturally. Boom! As the sword appeared, the entire stone room trembled. The energy of heaven and earth suddenly surged and gathered. It was as if a volcanic energy was suppressed inside the sword. Good sword! Du Xiaofu waved his hand and trembled. He felt the astonishing energy fluctuations within the sword and his heart trembled. No wonder the Tao artifact itself had the power to move mountains and overturn seas. It was enough to shake mountains and rivers, crack mountains and crack the earth, and destroy everything. Try it out. Inject your profound qi into it and control it with your mind. You will find something special. Zhuge Qiangbang's eyes trembled as he looked at the azure gold sword in Du Xiaofu's hand. His seemingly lifeless eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor at this moment. Buzz! Du Xiaofu tried to inject his profound qi into the sword in his hand. Immediately, the sound of wind and thunder resounded. With a sonorous sound, the azure gold brilliance shone brightly, almost drowning Du Xiaofu in it. The inside of the agile sword body suddenly trembled. Layers of light bloomed, and the sword body turned into layers of chain horns. They were all triangular in shape. Light poured down. They seemed to be separated, but in fact, they were naturally intimately connected. Every chain horn had dazzling azure gold talisman runes blooming, like the golden feathers of a golden winged rock. Its aura was also domineering and terrifying. A long sword instantly turned into an azure gold whip with a chain horn that was separated from the sword body. It was like a spirit python that was moving. A flood dragon soared into the sky and waved slightly. It was like a rock that was moving in the sky. There was a hint of spirituality in its domineering aura, and there was a hint of demonic charm in its simplicity. Chi la la. Du Xiaofu waved his hand and the azure gold whip and sword shadow revolved around his body. It channeled the energy of heaven and earth like a dragon circling around him. It was incomparably agile and dazzling. In the end, everything turned back and once again turned into a natural, simple, and elegant azure gold long sword. It's time for the fourth night watch to make up for the Chapter 1 ode to my brothers the day before yesterday. I've been busy these days and have only had 3 chapters a day. Therefore, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, which are the 30th and National Day, Xiaoyu will explode for 2 consecutive days. It's the last day of the month. Xiaoyu will take advantage of the outbreak to ask for flowers. After he's done with his work, he will work hard to write. Chapter 4:16. Good sword. Du Xiaofu's heart trembled as he held the sword in his hand. Perhaps it was because he had participated in the creation of the sword, and had fused his blood essence with it, but he felt as if he and the sword were one, as if they were connected by flesh and blood. Holding the treasured sword that contained the energy of a volcanic eruption, Du Xiaofu had a feeling that he could kill an ordinary martial lord cultivator with a raise of his hand. Has this sword been named? Vice Principal Zhuge Qiangbang's eyes trembled as he stared blankly at the sword in Du Xiaofu's hand. This was the strongest Dao weapon he had ever forged in his life. Vice Principal, this sword was forged by you. Please name it. Du Xiaofu raised his head, respectfully handing over the green gold sword to Vice Principal Zhuge's side. Zhuge Qiangbang took the sword from Du Xiaofu's hand. His hand trembled slightly, and the carvings on the sword's hilt moved like stars, flickering with a deep light. The blade of the sword was like a cliff, lofty and majestic, but the body of the sword was like a spirit snake, agile and enchanting. A cluster of azure talisman patterns bloomed, revealing a domineering will. This sword is agile and enchanting, domineering and intimidating. Hegemon Shadow, how about we call it Hegemon Shadow? Zhuge Qiangbang said, trembling slightly. All right, we'll call it Hegemon Shadow. Du Xiaofu nodded. As soon as he finished speaking, the azure sword emitted a clanging sound of wind and thunder, shaking one's soul. You've hidden your identity really well. Is your father well? Suddenly, Vice Principal Zhuge Qiangbang looked at Du Xiaofu. There was some fluctuation in his lifeless eyes as he asked, I know who your father is. You and your father look somewhat similar. From the first time I saw you, I guessed your identity. Du Xiaofu was slightly taken aback. Then, he raised his head and said, Vice Principal, I haven't seen my father in a long time. I don't know where he went. I've heard about what happened between you and your father. It must have been hard on you. Zhuge Qiangbang sighed. Then, he handed the sword back to Du Xiaofu and said, Why did you enter Tianwu Academy? Du Xiaofu put away the hegemon shadow. Vice Principal Zhuge Qiangbang had already seen through his identity, so there was no need to hide it. If Vice Principal Zhuge Qiangbang's intention, he would have done so long. And there was no need to wait. Now, my father asked. Was it that bastard father of yours that allowed you to enter the Talisman Institute as well? The gaze on Zhuge Qiangbang's aged face that seemed like a savage moved slightly as he looked at Du Xiaofu and asked. Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaofus. That. Sigh, that bastard just can't let it go. Zhuge Qiangbang sighed and shook his head. Vice Principal, my father. Before Du Xiaofu could finish his words, Vice Principal Zhuge Qiangbang interrupted Du Xiaofu and said, Your father, that bastard, probably asked you to come to the Talisman Institution to apologize. He owes quite a lot to the Talisman Institution. He's quite ruthless to send his son there. He must have calculated that us old fellows won't touch his son. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu bitterly smiled. Then, he asked Vice Principal Zhuge Qiangbang, Vice Principal, can you tell me more about my father? Zhuge Qiangbang looked at Du Xiaofu for a while, then nodded his head and said, Your father is extremely talented. Ever since he entered Tianwu Academy, his performance has always been astonishing. Among his cohort, he has always been number one on the martial ranking. His talent is astonishing, and his comprehension is outstanding. 20 years ago, I refined the lightning dragon, but for some reason, your bastard father appeared and recognized it as its master. Even the inner court elders couldn't stop him. Not long after, Elder Zhou refined the mighty emperor pellet, your father appeared again and snatched the pellet. As a result, your father became number 2 on the bounty board. Has my father's cultivation reached the martial emperor realm? Why did he snatch the mighty Huang pellet? Du Xiaofu was somewhat puzzled. The mighty Huang pellet was extremely useful for breaking through to the martial emperor realm. Back then, his drunkard father shouldn't have broken through to the martial emperor realm. Naturally, your father hadn't broken through to the martial emperor realm back then. Do you think it's that easy to break through to the martial emperor realm? It's said that your father snatched the mighty Huang pellet because of the Du household. Since then, the Du household hasn't sent any of their juniors to Tianwu Academy for many years. Until this year, someone from the Du household came again, said Zhuge Qiangbang. The Du household again. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. Although I refined the lightning dragon by capturing the lightning spirit, it's more important to find a wise master. The fact that your father recognized the lightning dragon as its master proves that he's a wise master of the lightning dragon. Just like how you were able to turn the tide and successfully refine the tyrannical shadow, you should also possess the tyrannical shadow. Zhuge Qiangbang continued, Your bastard father sent you to the Talisman Institution. This time, it's because of you that I was able to fulfill my wish and refine a Dao artifact that surpasses the level of the lightning dragon. However, Elder Zhou Chuan of the Medicine Institution had his mighty Huang pellet snatched away by your father. The second time he refined the mighty Huang pellet, you stole the main ingredient. You father and son are truly Elder Zhou's nemesis. Du Xiaofu bitterly smiled. He didn't know what to say. It seemed that he had to keep his promise to Elder Zhou in mind. He had to compensate Elder Zhou as soon as possible. When Du Xiaofu left the stone room, it was almost dusk. He remembered that Du Xiaoqing, Yang Shuang, Du Xiaoyao, and his elder sister, Du Xiaoman, had all gone to the back of the mountain to check on the little tiger's current movements. His figure flashed and immediately rushed to the back of the mountain. A moment later, in the continuous back of the mountain range rose and fell. The sea of trees was luxuriant, exuding an ancient aura. Roar, Du Xiaofu's figure was far away when he heard the soul-shaking tiger's roar. The sound waves rolled like thunder. In the entire mountain range, all the demonic beasts crawled and trembled, not daring to move. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked in the distance. In the sky in front of him, a huge tiger flapped its wings and leaped into the sky. Its body was dazzling. At this moment, the huge tiger's body was pitch black, and black runes soared into the sky. Roar! The huge pitch-black tiger roared. One could clearly see the sound waves stirring up space and soaring into the sky. It was like a huge wave rolling over, shaking the heaven and earth. The huge tiger flapped its wings, and a terrifying wave of air swept out. One could clearly see a wave of faint golden waves rising and falling like a tsunami, covering the sky and earth. It was incomparably domineering, and it caused the surrounding earth to crumble and the sea of trees to collapse. Rumble, as the terrifying wave of air swept out, many large trees were snapped in half. Huge rocks were torn apart, and finally turned into dust. The scene was terrifying. So strong. Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaoman raised their heads and looked at the huge pitch-black tiger. They were dumbstruck, and even their souls were trembling. This pitch-black tiger was too strong. It was like a supreme beast roaring, and its roar could move mountains and rivers, suppressing tens of thousands of beasts. This stupid tiger actually obtained such benefits. Its bloodline has soared by so much. Du Xiaoyao was on Du Xiaoqing's shoulder, and her faint golden spiritual eyes were rippling. Du Xiaofu's figure landed beside Ouyang Shuang, Du Xiaoman, Du Xiaoqing, and Du Xiaoyao. He raised his head and looked at the huge pitch-black tiger. It was no less than 100 feet, and its body was intimidating. It was sturdy and majestic. The tiger's claws stood in the air, and clouds formed under its feet. Mysterious runes spread out, and it had the power to collapse mountains and split the earth. This huge pitch-black tiger was the king-scaled demonic tiger. However, the scales on the king-scaled demonic tiger's body had already turned pitch-black, as if they were cast by the deep night sky. On the pitch-black scales, there was a faint golden color that was faintly jumping. The pitch-black tiger flapped its wings, and on its wings, there was a circle of mysterious runes wrapped around it. It emitted a domineering aura, and Du Xiaofu could clearly feel that it was connected to the aura of the golden-winged great rock. The huge tiger was entrenched, and it emitted dazzling pitch-black runes. It was like a mountain that oppressed people. It glared at them covetously, and its roar was like thunder, causing people to tremble in fear. Mystical Beast Realm. Du Xiaofu's eyes trembled. At this moment, the king-scaled demonic tiger's aura had actually reached the mystical beast realm. Brother, I feel that the little tiger's aura has become much stronger. It doesn't seem to be much weaker than me. When Du Xiaoqing saw Du Xiaofu, a green light flickered in her pure and innocent eyes. This seems to be the aura of the dark heavenly tiger, and there's also the aura of the golden-winged great rock. The king-scaled demonic tiger has endless opportunities. In Du Xiaofu's arms, Zhen Qingchuan's illusory figure flew out from the small pagoda. He looked at the huge pitch-black tiger in mid-air and was shocked. Brother Qingchun, what kind of demonic beast is the dark heavenly tiger? Du Xiaofu asked. He had never heard of the dark heavenly tiger before. You're too ignorant. The dark heavenly tiger is one of the beasts ranked at the top of the heavenly beast ranking. It's just that you don't know about it. You can't blame yourself because there are too few dark heavenly tigers. The azure dragon, white tiger, phoenix, and black tortoise are all ranked in the top 10 of the heavenly beast ranking. It's rumored that the dark heavenly tiger is on par with the white tiger, but for some reason, it's not as famous as the white tiger. However, any dark heavenly tiger is an absolute king. Zhen Qingchun said with shock in his eyes. Even when he was at his peak, it was difficult for him to find a dark heavenly tiger as a mount. No dark heavenly tiger could be tamed. Those beasts were like emperors, and their noble bloodlines wouldn't allow them to submit to anyone. Whoosh! In a moment, the king-scaled demonic tiger's huge body appeared in front of Du Xiaofu, accompanied by a terrifying aura. The tiger's eyes were filled with respect as it spoke, "Greetings, Master. Thank you for your generosity. You're finally able to speak. Du Xiaofu smiled. The king-scaled demonic tiger had stepped into the Beast Lord realm and was able to speak. If it could step into the Beast King realm one day, it would be able to transform into a human. He looked at the king-scaled demonic tiger and smiled. You don't have to call me master. Call me Third Young Master. Third Young Master. The little tiger was very respectful. It knew that if it wasn't for the young man in front of it, it wouldn't have been able to achieve what it had today. Chapter 4:17. Translator, H2DH2 Mr. The dumb tiger has improved rather quickly. Its bloodline is not weak at all. Du Xiaoyao scurried up to Du Xiaofu's shoulder and looked at the little tiger with some surprise in its eyes. It could even feel that the aura on the little tiger's body was not just ordinarily strong. It has the aura of atavism, the aura of the dark heavenly tiger, and the aura of the golden-winged great rock. It is indeed very strong. Once it matures, it will definitely not be much weaker than the white tiger. Zhen Qingchun sighed in amazement. This kind of transformation could be considered a miracle among the beast tribes. Du Xiaofu smiled slightly. The little tiger's breakthrough to the Beast Lord realm this time could be said to be a series of consecutive breakthroughs, and its progress was astonishing. However, the greatest benefit that the little tiger had obtained was not the consecutive breakthroughs in its cultivation level, but the changes in its bloodline. The black tiger essence blood that it had obtained back then should have come from the dark heavenly tiger that Zhen Qingchun had mentioned. In addition, the little tiger had once consumed some of the blood in its body that was equivalent to the golden-winged great rock, and the little tiger itself showed signs of atavism. Under these changes, the little tiger was definitely not something that the average beast tribe member could compare to. Dusk. As the sun set, the glow of the surrounding mountains gradually faded, and a silvery gray glow enveloped the mountains. As the sun gradually set in the west, the night grew thicker and thicker. When Du Xiaofu and the others returned to the weapons department, they saw an uninvited guest. It was a delicate and pretty girl. Du Xiaofu was no stranger to this person. She was a senior sister that he had seen many times before. She had been with Li Shui back then, and was also Ouyang Shuang's friend. Her name was Zhang Jin, and it was said that she and Li Shui were distant cousins. After Zhang Jin arrived, she pulled Ouyang Shuang aside and said something. Her expression was grave, and her beautiful face was filled with worry. A moment later, night fell completely. In the small hall of the courtyard, Ouyang Shuang, Du Xiaoman, Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, and Zhang Jing were all sitting upright. Du Xiaofu's face darkened. He had just learned from Ouyang Shuang that Zhang Jin had come to look for Ouyang Shuang because of Li Shui. Du Xiaofu learned from Zhang Jing that the Qian clan had made things difficult for Li Shui after she had escorted Chang Guyu back to the Li clan. The Qian clan had pushed all the blame onto Li Shui. In order to prevent a falling out between the Qian clan and the Li clan had no choice but to allow Li Shui to marry the crippled Chang Guyu. Since Li Shui is unwilling, where is she now? Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. No matter what, the responsibility for this matter did not lie with him, but at this moment, it was more or less related to him. Cousin Li Shui has been imprisoned by the elders of the clan. In order to prevent a falling out between the Li clan and the Qian clan, cousin Li Shui had no choice but to silently accept it. Zhang Jing looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "But I know that cousin Li Shui is unwilling to marry Chang Guyu. It is said that Chang Guyu's personality has changed greatly after he was crippled. If cousin Li Shui were to marry Chang Guyu now, there would be no happiness to speak of. This matter was decided by the Li clan, and Li Shui has already chosen to silently accept it. What can we do?" Du Xiaofu frowned. This matter was between the Qian clan and the Li clan. Even if others wanted to interfere, there was nothing they could do. Ouyang Shuang's eyes moved as she looked at Du Xiaofu. Her red lips parted slightly as she said, "Junior sister Zhang Jin's intention is to ask for your help. With your current reputation and status, you might have a chance to convince the Li family so that Li Shui won't suffer grievances for the rest of her life." "Me?" Du Xiaofu was slightly taken aback. "That's right. With your current reputation, even in the capital, if you can go to the Li clan, perhaps you can save cousin Li Shuai. Zhang Jing looked at Du Xiaofu with anticipation. She came this time in hopes of inviting Du Xiaofu to go to the Li clan in the capital. What do you think? Du Xiaofu hesitated, then looked at Ouyang Shuang and asked. Ouyang Shuang said, if possible, I also hope that you can help. After all, this matter is related to both of us. Du Xiaofu pondered for a while, then looked up at Du Xiaoman and said, elder sister, is the Du household also in the capital? The 8 imperial households are all in the capital, and the Du household is no exception. Du Xiaoman nodded. All right, let's make a trip to the capital tomorrow. Du Xiaofu said to Ouyang Shuang and Zhang Jing. His eyes flickered. Perhaps he should also make a trip to the Du household if he had the chance. That's great, I want to go too. I can finally go out and play. Hearing this, the one who was the happiest was Du Xiaoqing. She was so excited that she danced with joy. The next morning, in Tianwu Academy, the little tiger transformed into its true form and flapped its wings. Du Xiaofu rode on its back and left the academy, heading towards the Stone Dragon Empire. Accompanying him were Ouyang Shuang, Zhang Jing, Du Xiaoqing, and Du Xiaoyao. However, Du Xiaoman didn't come along. She only told Du Xiaofu to be careful and to pay more attention to the Du household in the capital. Du Xiaofu left the academy for a period of time and no one cared about him. There were only 4 people in the blacksmith department, and there were no teachers or elders in charge of the blacksmith department. Thus, he had the most freedom. Furthermore, with Du Xiaofu's current status in the academy, there weren't many people who would care about him. As for Zhang Jing and Ouyang Shuang, they applied for leave from the elders that very night and it was approved without a hitch. To the older students, the academy didn't restrict their freedom too much. The little tiger flapped its wings and the air whistled as fast as lightning. Something seems to have happened in the capital of the Stone Dragon Empire recently. All the people in the academy who are related to the capital have been summoned back, Zhang Jing said while riding on the little tiger's back. No wonder the general, Gu Xinyan, Gu Xiaofeng, Gu Hua, and Wu Kei all went back. So something big happened in the capital. Maybe we can see something interesting when we go there. Ouyang Shuang smiled. They're all from the capital? Du Xiaofu was astonished. No wonder he didn't see them. Junior Du, you're so close to the general and Gu Xinyan. Don't tell me you really don't know. Zhang Jing was astonished. She couldn't believe it. In the academy, there weren't many people who didn't know about the existence behind the general and the others. Ouyang Shuang naturally knew that Du Xiaofu wasn't lying. Her red lips slightly parted as she said, the capital has 8 major palaces. The general, Gu Hua, Gu Xinyan, Wu Kei, and Gu Xiaofeng all come from one of the 8 major palaces. The 8 major palaces are the 8 strongest forces in the Stone Dragon Empire. They are also the strongest forces in the Stone Dragon Empire. The 8 major palaces are led by the Du Palace. They're all back in the capital. We should be able to see them there. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't expect those guys to have such an extraordinary background. The backing behind them wasn't small at all. Big brother, can we rob them along the way? Du Qingqing stood on the little tiger's back and asked while looking at Du Xiaofu with anticipation. However, as soon as Du Qingqing finished speaking, Zhang Jin's delicate face suddenly became a little dazed. Ouyang Shuang glared hatefully at Du Xiaofu. In Ouyang Shuang's heart, all of this was caused by Du Xiaofu. She didn't know what Du Xiaofu taught Xiaoqing to make her think of robbing others. We can't rob them. Let's go to the capital first. Du Xiaofu clicked his tongue as he looked at Ouyang Shuang's eyes. He could only feel helpless in his heart. The distance from Tianwu Academy to the capital wasn't short. However, with the little tiger's current speed, it was much faster. According to Zhang Jing's estimation, with the little tiger's terrifying speed, it would take them at most 4 to 5 days to reach the capital. A moment later, everyone sat down cross-legged on the little tiger's back and began to meditate and cultivate. Even Du Xiaoyao had entered a certain kind of cultivation state, and a layer of faint golden light lingered around her body. Du Xiaofu carried a broadsword on his back and sat down cross-legged. As he formed a seal with his hands, an ancient aura spread out. Following which, his body was enveloped by a white light that resembled a divine radiance. Night fell, covering the vast and boundless city. Within the buildings, the moonlight shone on them. "Scram, all of you, scram! I'm already a cripple, so why do you still care about me? Scram!" Dang lang, peng peng, ear-piercing screams and the sound of things being smashed reverberated in the air. Outside the room, the servants were trembling in fear. Kacha, in the main hall, a middle-aged man with a sinister expression waved his hand and a thick wooden table beside him was smashed into smithereens. "How did my son end up like this? Why is that Du Xiaofu so heartless as to turn me into a cripple and make my son suffer a fate worse than death?" In the main hall, a woman was sobbing uncontrollably with tears in her eyes. This matter is also related to that woman from the Li clan. Since she doesn't know how to appreciate favors and is unwilling to marry into our Qian clan, we will not let her off. I will make sure that she serves my son for the rest of her life. No matter how extraordinary that Du Xiaofu is, my Qian clan will not let him off for crippling my son Guyu. The sinister-looking man bellowed as a cold glint shot out from his eyes. His son, Qian Guyu, possessed astonishing talent and was ranked at the top of Qianwu Academy's martial ranking. It was believed that he had a high chance of stepping into the martial king realm in the future and bringing glory to the Qian clan. Since young, he had been nurtured as the successor of the Qian clan. However, now that everything had been destroyed, how could he let go of such a heartache? Under the night sky, the moonlight shone down on the buildings. In a beautifully decorated room, a charming and seductive figure stood in front of the window. The curves of her body were moving. She raised her head slightly and looked at the bright moon in the sky. Her gaze made one's heart break and feel sorry for her. In the room, a tall and skinny middle-aged man stood behind Li Shui. Gazing at her slender back, his eyes reddened as he said, "Shui, father knows that you have been wronged, but your uncle has his own difficulties as well. You should know the strength of our Li clan and Qian clan. If it was back then, it wouldn't have mattered. However, now that the Qian clan is allied with the Du household," before the middle-aged man could finish his words, the seductive woman turned around and said, "Father, I understand the Li clan's difficulties. Since this matter was caused by me, I will bear the responsibility." Chapter 418. Father is useless, I've wronged you. The middle-aged man's eyes dimmed as he said this, then he turned and left. The charming woman continued to stand quietly in front of the window. After a long time, she softly muttered, "Perhaps this is fate, I can only accept it." 5 days later, in the morning, a vast and endless silhouette appeared in the morning sun. From afar, it looked like an endless dragon hibernating in the distance. Vast and endless buildings stretched as far as the eye could see. Endless rivers surrounded it, it was majestic and majestic. This was the capital city of the Stone Dragon Empire. It was originally called Dragon City, but as the imperial city of the Stone Dragon Empire, it was more commonly known as the imperial capital. The imperial capital was the most important place in the entire empire. It was a place where trade, finance, industry, administration, military, etiquette, and household were all integrated into one body. The imperial capital was in charge of the Stone Dragon Empire's 365 prefectures. It was under the feet of the emperor, no one dared to disobey. Early in the morning, 3 women, a man, a monkey, and a cat followed the lively crowd into the huge city gates. Waves of clamor immediately hit them in the face. The continuous palace buildings and the crowd on the streets faintly emitted a noble and royal aura, causing the 3 women and 1 man to feel rather uncomfortable for a moment. As expected of the imperial capital, it's so huge and filled with experts, Du Xiaofu stood in the middle of the crowded street and raised his head slightly to look at the vast and boundless city around him. Compared to Lanling City, who knew how many times larger it was, it gave off a majestic feeling. The streets were filled with people. Using his mental energy, Du Xiaofu could easily sense that there were many Pulse Spirit Realm cultivators. He could even occasionally encounter a Martial Lord Realm cultivator on the streets. This was rare in Lonling City and Dark City. This is the imperial capital, Dragon City. There are naturally experts as common as clouds. Furthermore, there are the 8 great prefectures. Don't cause trouble in the imperial capital. Ouyang Shuang couldn't help but remind Du Xiaofu, afraid that this guy would cause trouble in the imperial capital. After all, the imperial capital was not an academy. If others don't offend me, I won't offend them. I'm not a troublemaker. Du Xiaofu glanced at Ouyang Shuang and frowned. He curled his lips and said, but since you want to offend me, don't blame me for being impolite. I can't outtalk you. Let's go to the Li family first, Ouyang Shuang said. There are so many people. It's so fun. Du Xiaoqing jumped around like a green butterfly. She immediately blended into the crowd. She was interested in everything. The Li family was located in the southern part of the imperial city. Although it could not be compared to the 8 great kings' mansions, it was still a famous family in the imperial city. There were countless large and small forces in the entire imperial city, but there weren't many who could reach the level of the Li family. For the imperial capital, the 8 great kings' palaces were the top powers, while the Li family and the Qian family were the top powers. As for the other large and small forces, they could only survive and expand in the cracks. They slowly looked up at the Li family, Qian family, and other large forces, waiting for the day when they could find an opportunity to climb up. The streets that extended in all directions were densely packed with people. It was very lively. Du Xiaofu's group took more than 2 hours to reach the entrance of the Li family. This was only because the Li family was nearby. It was said that if one were to cross the entire imperial city from the streets, it would take a day and night for an ordinary person to walk. It was enough to show how big the imperial city was. The Li family was majestic. The walls were tall and there were many ferocious beasts carved on them. In front of the huge door, there were 2 stone lions that were about 2 meters tall. They looked ferocious and intimidating. In the middle of the door, there was a gold-plated plaque with the words Li family engraved on it. It was very grand. Quick, hang the wedding silk here. Hang the red lanterns on the beams. Clean it up. Tomorrow is the 5th Mrs. Big Day. In front of the Li family, it was very lively. Many servants were decorating the place with lanterns. In front of the door, there were several men in martial arts clothes standing upright. They held long swords in their hands. Their auras were extremely fierce. Du Xiaofu's group stopped at the Li family's gate. The men in martial arts clothes looked at each other. The leader immediately walked to Zhang Jin's side. His eyes swept over Du Xiaofu, Ouyang Shuang, and Du Xiaoqing. He was stunned by Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaoqing. Then he respectfully bowed to Zhang Jin and said, "So it's Miss Li, Uncle and Madam Li have arrived." Zhang Jin looked at the scene outside the Li family's gate. She frowned and asked the man in martial arts clothes, "Is it Cousin Li Shui?" "Miss Li, it is the 5th Mrs. Big Day. Tomorrow is the wedding of the 5th Miss and the young master of the Qian family." The man in martial arts clothes respectfully replied. "So it's Cousin Jing. No wonder I didn't see Cousin Jing and Aunt together yesterday." At this moment, a dozen young men and women walked out of the Li family's gate. A young man in his mid-20s who walked at the front saw Zhang Jin. His eyes immediately lit up and he quickly walked over. This young man was not bad. He was tall and straight and had a handsome face. However, there was a murderous aura between his eyebrows. He gave off a gloomy feeling. "Cousin Liu." Zhang Jin nodded slightly. Looking at the young man who walked over, her eyes inadvertently flashed with some displeasure. "It's good that you're here. I thought I wouldn't be able to see Cousin Jing this time." The young man looked at Zhang Jin. There was a slight fluctuation in his eyes, like a hunting dog looking at its prey. Then he saw Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaoqing. His eyes flashed with surprise. His body trembled. He was secretly moved and his heart trembled. The dozen young men and women in the surroundings all walked over at this moment. Looking at Ouyang Shuang and Du Shaoqing, the men's eyes were stunned and stunned. The women's faces were filled with jealousy and envy. Everyone was moved. I'll go take a look at cousin Li Shui first. Goodbye, cousin Li Yu. Zhang Jin nodded. Then she looked at Du Xiaofu behind her. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. She said softly, Junior Du, shall we go in? Du Xiaofu nodded and glanced at the dozen or so young men and women who were walking over. Their cultivation and strength were extremely impressive. Almost all of them had reached the pulse spirit realm and were between 20 to 25 or 26 years old. In the outside world, they could be considered to have extraordinary talent. Cousin Jing, I don't seem to have seen this person before. Could he be from cousin Jing's family? The young man called Li Yu saw that his cousin, who was usually aloof, was talking to a young man who was carrying a strange object on his back, in such a gentle tone. It seemed that their relationship wasn't ordinary. When he saw that this young man was accompanied by two peerless beauties, he immediately felt jealous. Although he asked with a smile, his eyes were filled with disdain. In the imperial capital, in the entire Stone Dragon Empire, how many young men could compare to his status? This is my junior brother from Tianwu Academy. Is there a problem with cousin Li Yu? Zhang Jin's gaze suddenly darkened. Her delicate face instantly turned cold. She knew her cousin's personality. If she didn't act forcefully, he might deliberately make things difficult for Junior Du. Furthermore, Junior Du wasn't someone who would let others make things difficult for him. If that happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. Zhang Jin didn't mind if something happened to her cousin Li Yu or if he was taught a lesson. However, she didn't want things to get out of hand and affect cousin Li Shui. So it's cousin Jing's junior brother from Tianwu Academy. Li Yu's gaze became even more disdainful. However, he maintained a smile on his face and said, Cousin, it's fine for you to visit fifth sister. However, this junior brother of yours can't. Fifth sister's wedding is tomorrow. According to the customs, no man is allowed to see her before the wedding. Even the groom is not allowed to see her. Zhang Jin frowned. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Why don't you go and meet Li Shui first and see what she has to say? We'll discuss it then, Ouyang Shuang said to Zhang Jin. Alright, I'll arrange for the two of you to stay. I'll go and meet cousin Li Shui after. Zhang Jin understood Li Yu's intentions. She looked at Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaofu and said, Leave it to me. The two of you are guests from afar and my Li clan has always been hospitable. I'll definitely make the necessary arrangements. Li Yu's gaze swept across Ouyang Shuang and Du Shaoqing before he said to Zhang Jin warmly, Cousin Jing, don't worry. Leave it to me. Your friend is my friend. I'll make the necessary arrangements. With that, Li Yu smiled, appearing extremely graceful. However, he did not even glance at Du Xiaofu. Instead, he continued to look at Ouyang Shuang and Du Shaoqing. He said warmly, Please come with me. I'm very happy to be of service to the two of you. Ouyang Shuang's hair was tied up in a bun and the fine strands of hair on her temples set off her peerless appearance. Her thin, shapely eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Her temperament was cold and unapproachable. Her large eyes were calm without any ripples. She did not even glance at Li Yu as she said to Zhang Jin, We'll be staying nearby. You have the academy badge, so it won't be difficult for you to find us. Alright then. I'll inform you as soon as I have any news. Zhang Jin nodded. Looking at how Li Yu was looking at Ouyang Shuang and Du Shaoqing, she knew why Ouyang Shuang was not staying at the Li clan. With that, Zhang Jin did not have to worry about Ouyang Shuang, Du Shaoqing, and Du Xiaofu at all. Putting aside Du Xiaofu's terrifying strength, Du Xiaoqing's strength was probably unmatched in the entire capital. Li Yu was immediately put on the spot when his enthusiasm was ignored. His face twitched slightly as a trace of coldness silently flashed across it. Let's go. We'll find a place to stay first before making the necessary arrangements. Seeing Zhang Jin enter the Li clan, Ouyang Shuang turned around and said to Du Xiaofu. All right. Du Xiaofu nodded. Li Shue's wedding was tomorrow. He was afraid that he would not be able to see Li Shue today. He could only let Zhang Jin scout out the situation first before making a decision. Chapter 419. Wait a minute. Just as the three of them turned to leave, Li Yu snorted softly and immediately blocked Ouyang Shuang's path. He raised his eyebrows and said, Miss, you don't want to enter my Li clan. Could it be that you despise my Li clan? At this moment, when the other young men and women saw this, they revealed an aura as if they were accomplices to a villain. They immediately blocked Ouyang Shuang, Du Xiaofu, and Du Xiaoqing in front of the three of them. Their auras fluctuated, causing the atmosphere to instantly freeze slightly and reveal uneasiness. Roar! The little tiger followed behind Du Xiaofu. Its black cat-like body arched slightly and it let out a soft roar. A single glance from Du Xiaofu would be enough to tear these young men and women to shreds. Du Xiaoqing, on the other hand, was indifferent. Her pure and innocent eyes quietly looked at Du Xiaofu's gradually darkening face. Ouyang Shuang's red lips parted slightly as she stared at Li Yu. However, there was no smile that could topple countries. Instead, it was coldly embellished on her ice-cold face. Her cold aura was undoubtedly telling others to stay away. She completely ignored Li Yu and softly spat out a single word, scram. Following Ouyang Shuang's words, the gazes of Li Yu and the other young men and women trembled. Being reprimanded by Ouyang Shuang in such a manner, Li Yu's face alternated between green and white. He could not help but sneer at Ouyang Shuang and said, Do you know who you're talking to? This isn't Tianmu Academy, this is the imperial capital. Ouyang Shuang's peerlessly beautiful face instantly turned even colder and indifferent when she heard this. She glanced at Li Yu and said, The Li clan is nothing before me. If it wasn't for Li Shue, you would be lying on the ground right now. TSK, what a boastful ass. If I don't teach you a lesson today, you'll really look down on my Li clan and the imperial capital. You should be from Tianmu Academy as well, right? I would like to see just how capable the people from Tianmu Academy are. Li Yu finally couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. In the imperial capital, and in front of the Li family's gate, who would dare to speak to him like this? Moreover, this girl actually didn't put him in her eyes at all. Boom! As Li Yu's cold laughter sounded out, he waved his hand and a palm instantly slammed towards Li Shue. A wave of profound energy surged and runes flashed, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. Scram! Just as Ouyang Shuang's voice sounded, a terrifying aura erupted from her graceful and exquisite body. She lifted her delicate hand and clenched her fist slightly. Immediately, the air fluctuated. A vaguely visible vacuum appeared wherever her fist passed. Following the flickering of symbols, a fist ruthlessly collided with the former's palm with lightning speed. Bang! Everything happened as fast as lightning. As a deep sonic boom rang out, Li Yu's body was sent flying. After that, he crashed heavily onto the ground more than 10 meters away. The impact caused the ground to crack, sending gravel flying everywhere. At the sight of this scene, the gazes of the surrounding dozen young men and women, as well as those at the gate of the Li residence, trembled. Young Master Li Yu, who was at the mysterious pulse spirit stage, was actually unable to withstand a single blow. The strength of this absolute beauty had actually reached such a terrifying level. Even Li Yu wasn't a match for her. After the surrounding dozen young men and women were shocked, they immediately retreated. How would they dare to block her? Although the expressions of the few young guards changed, when they saw that even young Master Li Yu wasn't a match for her, all of them wanted to pounce and tear Du Xiaofu to pieces. However, they didn't dare to truly go up against Du Xiaofu. Let's go and wait for Zhang Jin's news. Ouyang Shuang said to Du Xiaofu. She didn't care about Li Yu at all. Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. He shot a glance at Li Yu, who was lying on the ground in the distance, before nodding and leaving. Li Yu struggled to stand up. His face was pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Brother Li Yu, do you want to notify the experts in the family? A young man stepped forward and asked Li Yu in a fawning manner. However, there was still a trace of fear in his eyes as he looked at the moving figure leaving. No need. No one is allowed to spread this matter. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Li Yu's eyes darkened. If he notified the experts in the family, he wouldn't even be able to withstand a single blow from a little girl. He was afraid that it would be detrimental to his status in the family in the future. He would also become the laughingstock of his other brothers. If this matter were to spread to the circle of peers in the various large factions in the imperial capital, he would definitely become a laughingstock in the future. Li Yu's eyes were gloomy and cold as he watched the figures leave. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he said, Zhang Jin came back in such a hurry, and the first thing she did was to look for fifth sister. I'm afraid it's definitely not something good. I won't let those 2 women and 1 man go. This is the imperial capital. They can't escape my grasp. An hour later, on a slightly quiet street not far from the Li clan, there was an inn called Guest Friend Inn. Within a rather clean and tidy room, Du Xiaofu sized up the surroundings, and then he smiled to Ouyang Shuang and said, I never expected that you would be rather familiar with the imperial capital. I've stayed in the imperial capital before, but I'm not too familiar with it. Ouyang Shuang's eyes narrowed. I didn't expect Li Shui to get married tomorrow. What should we do now? If we really go to the Li family, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to convince them. Let's wait for the news before making a decision. Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. He was naturally aware of Ouyang Shuang's worries. Li Shui and Qin Guyu's wedding was tomorrow, and it was likely that the relatives and friends of both families had already received the invitation. Given the status of the Li family and the Qian family in the imperial capital, the news of the wedding would have already spread throughout the imperial capital. Putting aside the fact that the Li family had no choice but to agree, if they suddenly went back on their word before the wedding, the Li family wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure. Not only would they become the laughingstock of the entire imperial capital, they would also have to bear the wrath of the entire Qian family. This is the only thing we can do now. It seems like the situation is more troublesome than we thought. If she hadn't returned and stayed in Tianwu Academy, the Qian family wouldn't have been able to do anything to her. However, she insisted on escorting Qin Guyu back to give the Qian family an explanation. Ouyang Shuang furrowed her brows. Her beautiful countenance stiffened as she sighed. After which, she glanced at Du Xiaofu and spoke in a soft voice, Now, we can only wait for Zhang Jin to arrive and see what Li Shui thinks. Ouyang Shuang's large eyes landed on Du Xiaofu as she asked, What if Li Shui isn't willing? What do you plan to do? Du Xiaofu's gaze flickered. After a moment of silence, he replied, If she isn't willing, we'll see. Big brother, let's go shopping, all right? In the room, Du Xiaoqing couldn't sit still. She intimately tugged at Du Xiaofu's arm, pestering him to go shopping. After staying in Tianwu Academy for so long, she had long been bored to death. All right, but we can't go running around. Du Xiaofu nodded. He reckoned that Zhang Jin wouldn't be able to find out the news so quickly. Since they had just arrived at the capital, Du Xiaofu also wanted to walk around and experience the prosperity of the capital. All right, seeing Du Xiaofu nod his head, Du Xiaoqing immediately nodded happily and agreed. Ouyang Shuang hesitated for a moment before saying to Du Xiaofu, You guys go out for a stroll. I happen to have some matters to attend to and meet some people that I must meet. I also hope that I can find some people to help with this matter. Perhaps it will be beneficial to us. All right, then be careful. Du Xiaofu nodded. Ouyang Shuang seemed to be rather familiar with the capital and seemed to know some people there. There was no need for him to worry about her. A moment later, after leaving the guest inn, Ouyang Shuang bid farewell to Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoqing on the bustling street. Du Xiaoqing also squeezed into the bustling crowd. She was extremely interested in the dazzling lineups on both sides of the street. After Du Xiaofu and Ouyang Shuang left the guest inn, two mysterious figures peeked their heads out from the corner. After seeing Du Xiaofu and Ouyang Shuang leaving, they also hurriedly squeezed into the crowd. Du Xiaofu glanced to the side. His gaze flickered as he watched the two tall and thin figures disappear. Following which, he chased after Du Xiaoqing. "Big brother, I want to buy this. I want to eat this. And this too. Big brother, what is this? It's so beautiful. Can I still buy this?" On the bustling street, Du Xiaoqing was the happiest. Even Du Xiaoyao joined in the fun. On the streets, there were quite a few young masters who brought along demonic beast pets and mounts. Therefore, regarding little demon Du's identity, there was no one in the imperial capital who was surprised and treated it as normal. Du Xiaofu followed behind. Looking at the happy figure in front of him, a smile hung on the corner of his mouth. However, in his mind, he was thinking about the younger sister he had never met. If she was by his side right now, she would definitely be this happy. Rockery, pond, lotus flowers, goldfish. In a quiet courtyard, two rather wretched figures stood respectfully. One of them said to a young man in his mid-20s, "Third young master, we've tracked them. The two women and one man are staying in a guest inn not far away. They should have gone shopping by now." "Guest inn? Humph, you can't escape from my grasp. I will never let you go." Chapter 420. Guest inn, humph, you won't be able to escape from my grasp. I won't let you off. The young man's face was pale and his expression was gloomy. At this moment, his eyes were filled with coldness, causing the two people in front of him to tremble. On both sides of the bustling streets, there was a dazzling array of goods. There were also many shops that only cultivators could use. Du Xiaofu couldn't help but be driven by his curiosity and entered the imperial capital to take a look. It was indeed the imperial capital of the empire. Inside the imperial capital, there were countless high-grade medicinal pills, elixirs and so on. Elixirs and medicinal pills that were rarely seen outside were also not rare in the imperial capital. Although the number of merchants in the Dark Forest and Dark City wasn't much worse than the imperial capital, the number of merchants in the Dark Forest was much lower than the imperial capital. Du Xiaofu went to several shops to take a look. He also obtained quite a number of rare elixirs and kept them for future use. There were also rare materials for refining weapons. He also kept the suitable ones in his bag. Several hours later, unknowingly, it had already turned from morning to afternoon. Du Xiaofu could be considered to have gained quite a lot. He bought quite a number of elixirs, and materials for weapon forging. However, he had spent most of his magnetite and mystic coins. Tomorrow, the Qian clan and the Li clan will be celebrating. With the marriage alliance between the two clans, their influence will increase greatly. In the future, other than the 8 great king residences, no other faction will be able to deal with the Qian clan and the Li clan. I heard that there is a secret behind the marriage alliance between the two clans. It is said that Chang Guyu of the Qian clan was crippled by the terrifying Du Xiaofu in Tianwu Academy, turning him into a cripple. The girl from the Li clan is going to marry Chang Guyu, who is already a cripple. There must be something going on behind this. That can't be. With the Qian clan's influence, who would dare to cripple Chang Guyu? That would be courting death. Du Xiaofu has a mysterious background and terrifying talent. Furthermore, he is in Tianwu Academy. No matter how powerful the Qian clan is, they wouldn't dare to do anything in Tianwu Academy. Amidst the noisy streets, one could hear about the marriage between the Qian clan and the Li clan. With the influence of the two clans in the capital, it was naturally enough for the residents of the capital to discuss for quite some time. Du Xiaofu frowned as he listened to the conversation between the Qian clan and the Li clan. He then raised his head and looked at the sky. He was about to return to the inn. Perhaps Zhang Jin had already found the inn by now. Rumble, at this moment, the ground trembled. Over a dozen horses galloped over from the street in front. Their forehooves were flying, and their auras were unusually ferocious, causing the ground to tremble. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked over. There were over 10 majestic and tall demonic horses. Their entire bodies were yellow and covered in scales. There were 2 horns on their heads, and they appeared to be extraordinarily noble. The yellow scales on their bodies even carried lightning shuttling back and forth. Runes could be faintly seen flashing about, and their imposing manner was astonishing, causing one's heart to tremble. They are all Pulse Realm Lightning Draconic horses. Looking at these extraordinary demonic horses, Du Xiaofu was rather surprised. The Lightning Draconic horses were not ordinary demonic beasts, and their growth was extremely impressive. It was said that the Lightning Draconic horses even had the bloodline of a flood dragon. However, the bloodline was so rare that it was difficult to awaken the power of a flood dragon. Occasionally, a Lightning Draconic horse would miraculously awaken, and eventually grow to a terrifying level. In the capital, to be able to have the rare Lightning Draconic horses as mounts, and to have over 10 Lightning Draconic horses at once, they were definitely extraordinary. On the backs of the Lightning Draconic horses, there were burly men and young men wearing silver armor and holding silver war spears. All of them had an extraordinary bearing, and their auras were sharp. It's the Du household's silver dragon guards, the elites of the Du household. If only I could become the Du household's silver dragon guards, then outside, even ordinary city lords would have to give me face. The Du household's silver dragon guards have always only recruited the extraordinary disciples of the Du household. It is difficult for outsiders to enter. That is the elite force of the Du household, don't even think about it. Train well, and when the time comes, you still have a chance to become a guard of the Du household. These silver dragon guards should have just returned from their errands. The Du household is right in front of us, why don't we go and take a look? You're courting death. How can the Du household be a place where anyone can trespass? Even if people from other imperial palaces want to go to the Du household, they have to report in advance. If you trespass into the Du household, I'm afraid you'll be killed on the spot. More than a dozen lightning demon horses whizzed past. The pedestrians on the street gave way to them one after another. No one was displeased in their hearts. Instead, their gazes were filled with awe and reverence. Their mouths were filled with shock as they discussed endlessly. What an arrogant fellow, I really want to teach them a lesson. Du Xiaoqing was pulled to the side by Du Xiaofu. Facing those silver dragon guards, she was extremely indignant. Who asked those fellows to disturb her shopping? If not for Du Xiaofu repeatedly ordering her not to casually release her aura and attack, she probably would have already taken action. Is the Du household right in front of us? Listening to the discussions of the crowd, Du Xiaofu's gaze slightly moved. After a moment, he glanced sideways at Du Xiaoyao and said, "You look after little Qing for a while, I'll go to the front and be back soon. Don't you need us to accompany you?" Du Xiaoyao's pale golden spirit eyes fluctuated as she asked Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu looked at Du Xiaoyao for a while, then continued to look sideways at Du Xiaoyao and said, "No need, you look after little Qing and little Tiger, don't let her cause any trouble. I'll be back soon. I just want to take a look at some places, nothing will happen." "Okay, go ahead." Du Xiaoyao nodded her head. With a leap, she also landed on Du Xiaoqing's back. "Come, let's go shopping." Du Xiaoqing, who was still immersed in the bustling shopping, immediately followed Du Xiaoyao and little Tiger. Phew! Du Xiaofu stood on the street and took a deep breath. Then, he headed in the direction where the silver dragon guards went. In the bustling street, there was a secluded and dark street. A young man in his mid-20s cautiously walked into the street. After looking left and right, he knocked on the door of a secluded courtyard and darted in. "I didn't expect the Li family's third young master to be here. Tomorrow is the big day of the Li family and the Qian family. I was planning to pay a visit tomorrow to congratulate the Li family and the Qian family on their marriage. In the future, the Qian family's power will definitely soar and become the #1 force under the 8 royal families. When the time comes, I hope that the third young master will support my Wolfang escort agency." In the courtyard's small hall, a scar-faced man looked at the young man with a smile on his face. He seemed to be enthusiastic and respectful, but his eyes flashed with disdain and contempt that the young man couldn't detect. Dark Wolf, help me with something and I'll agree to your request. Find a way to let your Wolf Fang escort agency cooperate with my Li family's trading company. The young man looked at the scar-faced man with a pale face and a cold glint in his eyes. It was Li Yu from the Li family. What's the matter? The scar-faced man's eyes lit up slightly and asked Li Yu. There are 2 women and a man in the guest inn. They are young, but their strength is not bad. But if you are going to do it personally, it will be a piece of cake. You can do whatever you want with the man, as long as he disappears. As for the 2 women, I want them captured alive. If you succeed, I promise that your Wolf Fang escort agency will cooperate with my Li family in the future. Li Yu promised. How could the 2 women and the man in the imperial capital escape from his hands? He could pinch them to death with a casual move of his finger. Okay, remember your promise. If you dare to lie to me, you should know the consequences. No matter how strong the Li family is, I won't appear in the imperial capital. The dark forest is a good place. The scar-faced man nodded and warned Li Yu. He, Dark Wolf, was definitely not someone who would be used as a tool. Since he helped, he would get the benefits he wanted. The bustling streets gradually became quieter and quieter. After turning a few wide streets, Du Xiaofu appeared in a magnificent palace complex. In front of the magnificent mansion, there was a white jade staircase. 2 dragon-shaped stone carvings were hovering on top of the stone pillars that could not be encircled by an adult's arms. On top of the Vermilion Gate, there was a golden plaque engraved with the quaint words Protector King's Mansion. The mansion's signboard was grand and majestic, giving off an ancient feeling. Although the Li family's mansion was grand, but compared to the Du family's mansion, it was like a small child in the presence of a great one. Is this the place that my drunkard father went to before? Du Xiaofu gazed at the large vermilion gates of the majestic mansion, thoughts running through his mind. Protector King's Mansion, Du King's Mansion. Perhaps the Du King's Mansion in front of him had an inseparable relationship with the Du King's Mansion in front of him. This place was also connected to the Stone City Du family, however, they gradually lost contact with each other. Outside the Du Palace, there were several spear-wielding guards standing guard. They were wearing armor and their aura was not weak. From the aura they emitted, one could tell that they were experts who had experienced the baptism of blood. One of the guards looked at Du Xiaofu who was standing far away from the door, his tone filled with arrogance. Who are you? This is the Du Palace. If you have nothing to do, quickly leave. The guards called themselves the Du Palace, not the Protector King's Mansion. For anyone in the Du Palace, being a member of the Du family was something to be proud of. Today and tomorrow, 2 days of eruption. On the last day of the month, brothers and sisters, please don't forget to send flowers. Please send flowers as support. Chapter 421. I only wanted to take a look around the Du household. Du Xiaofu raised his head. It was better not to enter the Du household now. Anyway, he did not know anyone inside. What could he do even if he went to the Du household? Even if the Du household had something to do with the separation of his family, it would not be too late to ask about it when the time was right. The Du household is not a place you can casually visit. Hurry up and leave, otherwise we will not be polite to you. A guard did not place Du Xiaofu in his eyes. How could the Du household be a place he could casually visit? What a tyrannical Du household, not even allowing people to see. Then why not find a large cloth to cover it up so that no one can see? Du Xiaofu shook his head and smiled indifferently. It really felt like when a person achieved the Tao, even his chickens and dogs would ascend to the heavens. Even the guards of the Du household were so arrogant. This made Du Xiaofu feel disgusted. Little brat, you are insulting the Du household, insulting the Du household. You must be captured and punished. Hearing this, the face of the leader of the guards immediately darkened. How could he allow someone to be disrespectful to the Du household? If this spread out, it would damage the reputation of the Du household. Instantly, The long spear in his hand trembled. In a flash, the runes on it shone brightly, and the spear pierced towards Du Xiaofu. The long spear was swift and fierce, instantly closing in on Du Xiaofu. The rather fierce attack proved that this guard was not an idiot. Humph! Following the guard's attack, Du Xiaofu coldly snorted. Just as the long rune spear was in front of him, his figure suddenly flashed, drifting like a god. In an instant, he appeared beside the guard, lightly waving his hand and landing on the guard's back. Bang! A low muffled sound rang out. The guard's back instantly trembled, a mouthful of blood spurting out of his mouth. His body directly smashed into the ground, a large mouthful of blood spurting out of his mouth. Audacious, you dare to attack the Du household. The surrounding guards were startled when they saw this, but they immediately attacked one by one. Dazzling spear lights crisscrossed and swept towards Du Xiaofu in an instant. Their attacks were clean and efficient, without any trace of politeness. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and tapped his right foot. Profound qi surged under the soles of his feet, and he immediately leaped up and retreated a few meters. He was incomparably swift and nimble, like a falcon leaping down, or a tiger leaping down. Qi la, several guards joined hands. Spear radiance flew through the air, blossoming with symbols. Their auras were not weak at all. The next time you make a move, you'd better be more careful. This time, I'll teach you a lesson so that you'll all remember. As soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, he waved his purple robe sleeve slightly, and a majestic gust of wind immediately swept out, ruthlessly sweeping across the bodies of the guards. Qi la, Puchi, a strong gust of wind swept out, and those guards immediately screamed miserably. Each and every one of them coughed up blood as their bodies flew backwards. They fell into the distance in an incomparably sorry state, and even though they struggled, it was difficult for them to get up. Du Xiaofu had calculated his strength. He did not take their lives, but they would not be able to get out of bed for at least a year. Who dares to trespass into my Du household? Have you eaten the guts of a leopard? More than 10 figures immediately rushed out from the Du household. They were all dressed in silver armor and wielding silver war spears. Their auras were extraordinary, and their auras were sharp. These 10+ people rushed out and glanced at the few guards on the ground. Immediately after, they surrounded Du Xiaofu in a lightning-like manner. A 30-year-old man looked at Du Xiaofu. His eyes were sharp and arrogant as he said in a deep voice, "Brat, surrender." What a good Du household, not asking the right and wrong, and wanting to capture people without a fight. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled. These people's attire was exactly the same as the Du family people he had met not long ago. They were also the Silver Dragon Guards, the elite force of the Du family. Du Xiaofu's purple robes fluttered slightly and his aura was calm. However, at this moment, a domineering aura that could not be suppressed gradually rose on Du Xiaofu's resolute and determined face under the fierce aura of these dozen people. He glanced indifferently at the dozen people and said, "What if I am not willing to surrender?" "Then kill without mercy," the leading man said in a deep voice. Who dared to cause trouble in front of the Du household? No matter what, daring to cause trouble in front of the Du household meant that they did not put the Du household in their eyes. This was already a serious crime. "I'm afraid you guys are not qualified." Du Xiaofu sneered. These 10 over Du household Silver Dragon Guards, he really did not put them in his eyes. Today, he had seen the arrogance of the Du household, or perhaps it could be said that this was the face that the Du household should have. But no matter what, Du Xiaofu would not allow anyone to bully him. Others could not, but the Du household could not. "You're courting death." The leading man coldly snorted. The silver spear in his hand trembled, and the runes flashed. As if it had transformed into a silver python, it instantly pierced towards Du Xiaofu's chest. His attack was fast, accurate, and ruthless, and his aura was fierce and murderous. Du Xiaofu moved. He waved his hand and his 5 claws slightly bent. In the center of his palm, there were faint talisman patterns surging, blooming with golden light. It was as if he was holding a small storm in his palm. All of a sudden, Du Xiaofu's hand directly grabbed the spear that the leader had thrust out. With lightning speed, he forcefully grabbed the tip of the spear and sucked the power of the long spear into the golden profound chi vortex in his palm. After which, the power in his palm gushed out. From the tip of the spear to the body of the spear, the long spear suddenly shattered inch by inch, turning into fragments. Ah! A tyrannical force swept over, and the leading man let out a miserable shriek. Kacha sounds came from his arms. Starting from his palms, all the way to his arms, his internal organs trembled, and a mouthful of dark red blood spurted out from his mouth. Leader, the surrounding dozen silver dragon guards were shocked. Immediately, they moved in unison. Numerous dark-colored spears rushed out like silver spiritual pythons, and a dozen spear lights rushed towards Du Xiaofu. Their auras erupted, and their might was extraordinary. Get lost, Du Xiaofu let out a deep cry. Shaking his arm, he waved his hand and violently swept it in all directions. In an instant, the space sank, and a golden energy scattered in all directions, causing Du Xiaofu's purple robe to flutter. Walala, with just a slight wave of his hand, the dozen silver dragon guards were in a miserable state. They were completely powerless to resist. Soon after, blood sprayed out from their mouths, and their faces were swollen, dripping with blood. Swoosh swoosh, at this moment, the rather large commotion outside the mansion finally attracted the attention of more and more people. Inside the Du family, figures leapt out one after another. Numerous gazes immediately looked at the miserable-looking silver dragon guards and silver dragon guards scattered on the ground. All of them had extremely ugly expressions. A strong man in his 30s stood at the front. Behind him, there were many people with powerful auras clustered. Their gazes then landed on Du Xiaofu's body. One by one, the members of the Du family looked at Du Xiaofu, who was carrying a mysterious broadsword-like object on his back. He was young, around 17 or 18 years old. Within their ugly gazes, there was a trace of astonishment. Are you the one who barged into my Du family and seriously injured my people? The strong man in his 30s looked at Du Xiaofu and asked. The aura around his body fluctuated, causing the surrounding space to tremble. He actually had the cultivation of an initial martial lord. That's right. In response to the strong man's question, Du Xiaofu only replied with two simple words. Gazing at the group of people behind him, Du Xiaofu's eyebrows slightly twitched under the probing of his mental energy. Among this group of Du family members, there were quite a few who had extraordinary auras. In particular, the auras on their bodies faintly caused some undulations in his body. Perhaps, this was due to his bloodline. As Du Xiaofu's words sounded, the gazes of the people who came out of the Du family changed. Soon after, more and more Du family members walked out, before they began to observe their surroundings. The strong man in his 30s tightly stared at Du Xiaofu, a cold glint flashing across his eyes as he said, "Why did you barge into my Du family and injure my people?" "I was only outside taking a look. How can I barge into your Du family's residence?" "They wanted to attack me, so I injured them." "What's wrong with that?" Du Xiaofu softly replied, a faint golden glow flashing across his clear eyes. "What an arrogant brat. No matter who you are, surrender. Or else, don't blame me for suppressing you," the strong man said in a deep voice, his aura surging. An extremely vigorous aura was instantly awakened like a giant hibernating beast, as his aura abruptly surged. The aura on the strong man's body was extraordinary. Although he had just ascended to the martial marquis stage, his aura was extremely vigorous and ferocious. Faintly, it seemed to be accompanied by an extremely strange aura that caused one's heart to tremble. The protector is about to take action. Upon seeing this, the surrounding Du family members instantly began to retreat. The elder was about to take action and capture the brat who dared to cause trouble outside the Du family residence. As this aura swept out, the blood in the bodies of several Du family members began to solidify, their breathing becoming rough. As expected of one of the youngest protectors in the entire Du family. An extremely powerful and strange aura. Sensing the aura on the strong man's body, Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. That aura was extraordinary and valiant, but faintly, there was another aura that seemed to be able to imperceptibly make him feel something in his heart. However, that feeling was difficult to describe clearly and clearly. But that valiant and strange aura, in Du Xiaofu's eyes, was still insufficient. He said to the strong man, "Your strength is not enough to stop me. I still have things to do, so I'll leave first." As his indifferent words fell, Du Xiaofu turned around and strode away. There was no need to continue entangling with the people of the Du family. It was more important to first go back and settle Li Shui's matter. As for the Du family, it would not be too late to come back when the opportunity arises. Chapter 422. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Just as Du Xiaofu's figure was about to turn and leave, the burly man in his 30s stomped his foot on the ground and leapt up. His body was like an iron tower, finally landing directly in front of Du Xiaofu after he had turned around. The ground where his feet landed directly shook and then shattered into a pile of fine powder, cracks spreading and collapsing. "Brat, after acting so impudently in my Du household, you still think you can come and go as you please? The Du household is not a place where anyone can come and behave atrociously." The burly man stared straight at Du Xiaofu, some coldness flashing through his eyes. An astonishingly vigorous aura emanated from him, with no intention of letting Du Xiaofu off. His aura surged, causing the surrounding space to immediately tighten. "Why bother pestering me?" Du Xiaofu's figure stood ramrod straight, the purple-gold heavenly tower wrapped in purple cloth on his back about to set. Under the sunlight, the purple cloth reflected a cold purple luster, the indifferent aura around him exuding a domineering aura, his clear eyes hiding a frightening aura. At this moment, sensing the formless aura on Du Xiaofu's body, many people secretly trembled. That kind of aura was faintly unfathomable and hard to grasp. They could not help but feel solemn, fear and doubt arising in their hearts. Pretending to be mysterious, "Stay here first and talk later." The burly man in his 30s gave a low shout after his gaze moved slightly. Forming a hand seal, he waved his hand. As the hand seal formed faintly, the surrounding space trembled slightly, waves of runic energy leaving a vacuum mark in the air. A vigorous surge of profound qi in his body surged, surging in the air like a wave. Layers of ripples spread out, as if a tsunami had suddenly appeared, shocking everyone. Facing a young man who could seriously injure more than 10 silver dragon personal guards with just a wave of his hand, this burly man did not underestimate Du Xiaofu in the slightest. The moment he attacked, he used his full strength. In a short period of time, his palm was wrapped in strange dazzling runes, surrounded by vigorous profound qi. The palm seal immediately slammed towards Du Xiaofu. Overturning Si palm. A low roar came from the burly man's throat. The power of the palm print suddenly surged. The runes were dazzling and there were faint sounds of waves roaring. An energy that could topple mountains and overturn seas poured out in torrents, immediately enveloping Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu didn't move in the slightest in the face of such a terrifying attack from the burly man, allowing the palm print to land on him. Du Xiaofu sensed that this terrifying palm print had something to do with the Du family's Stormy Waves palm. It should be the upgraded version of the Stormy Waves palm. Now that it had reached the Marquis grade, its power had increased significantly. Boom! The palm imprint pressed down, enveloping Du Xiaofu. The space trembled as its aura soared into the sky. Qi! At the last moment, Du Xiaofu finally moved. In an instant, a shocking aura burst out. His eyes flashed and a fist covered in golden xian qi suddenly stretched out. Like a pale golden lightning, it directly collided with the burly man's palm imprint. At the moment when the palm imprint and the fist imprint collided, a golden talisman was suddenly released on the fist. It directly blocked the palm imprint that was crushing down. Then, waves of overbearing energy swept out, bang! 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 Low muffled sounds came one after another. There were a total of 13 sounds. Waves of shocking energy waves had a total of 13 layers. The layers overlapped each other and the aura almost multiplied. It became more and more shocking. When it reached the 13th layer, the aura had reached a terrifying level. It was like a shock wave that landed on the burly man's palm imprint. Kacha! The burly man's palm suddenly emitted the sound of bones cracking. His face suddenly turned pale and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. The bones in his palm were directly shattered. He resisted the intense pain and did not scream. However, his face was already twisted and ferocious. Du Xiaofu used the Stone City's Du family's oscillating fist, 9 heavy waves. Each wave was more difficult than the previous one. However, Du Xiaofu still used the perfected version of the oscillating fist, 13 heavy waves. Puchi! With the impact of the fist, the burly man's ferocious and distorted face immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end, he was sent flying and landed heavily in the distance. His body was stuck in the ground and flew horizontally. Many of the hard stone slabs on the ground were shattered and turned into a large number of small stones that shot out. Looking at the elder who was sent flying while spitting out blood, the entire Du family was silent. Huff! Huff! Sounds of people sucking in cold air rose and fell. No one would have thought that a martial lord realm protector would be unable to withstand a single blow. It seems to be our Du family's oscillating fist, but it seems to be a little different. It's even more powerful. Who is this kid? How can he have such terrifying strength? Du Qi and Du Yunxin are about the same age as this youth, but they are far from having such abnormal strength. The surrounding Du family people immediately discussed in shock. That youth's strength was too terrifying. Even the younger generation of the Du family of the same age could not compare to him. It's the Du residence. Someone is causing trouble in the Du residence. Someone has seriously injured the Du residence's people. Someone is actually causing trouble in the Du residence. The shocking commotion here also spread out. Immediately, people on the surrounding streets followed the sound and came to the vast square outside the Du residence to watch. Seeing that someone was actually causing trouble in the Du residence, which was a rare sight in 100 years, a large group of onlookers immediately gathered to watch the show. Set up the formation and capture that kid. In just a short moment of shock, more and more people gathered in the Du residence. Among the Du family disciples, there were also many men and women who jumped out. A total of 36 people jumped out instantly. 16 of them were cultivators of the Pulse Spirit realm. Among them, there were also cultivators at the peak of the complete Pulse Spirit realm and the peak of the Pulse Spirit realm. 36 people, 36 directions, surrounded Du Xiaofu from all directions. Vaguely, the 36 directions were connected. 36 spears shot out, and 36 auras exploded. Heavenly Spirit Earthly Fiend Heavenly Spear Formation. The leader of the group, an old man in his 50s, shouted. His gaze was gloomy and his face was ashen. His eyes were cold like waves. Someone dared to cause trouble in the Du residence. He definitely could not let him go. Otherwise, how could the Du residence establish itself in the empire and become the protector residence? The 36 people moved together. Runes exploded on their spears. Everyone moved together. Dense runes surged, and the spear lights intertwined. Boom! A terrifying aura suddenly exploded. The space seemed to be overturned. Runes rushed to the sky. The 36 spear lights erupted, turning into 72, then 144, 288, the terrifying and sharp spear lights crisscrossed. Energy erupted, and all of them enveloped Du Xiaofu in an instant. The vast spear lights seemed to want to drown Du Xiaofu in an instant. The spear lights were densely packed and tore through the air. It was unstoppable. 36 cultivators of the Pulse Spirit realm formed a formation. They complemented each other and channeled the energy of heaven and earth. At this moment, even an ordinary martial lord of the mystery level cultivator would not be able to withstand such an attack. Du Xiaofu did not dodge. In his clear eyes, a chill finally surged. A kind man will be bullied, and a kind horse will be ridden. Since you guys are like this, I have no choice but to show you no mercy. Du Xiaofu waved his hand. A faint golden light surged out. Suddenly, golden runes flashed on his skin. In an instant, his hand swept out fiercely. Skyshaker wings. Du Xiaofu's hand was like a palm leaf fan. Wherever it passed, faint golden runes flashed and condensed. It was as if an arc-shaped golden space had condensed around his palm. Layers of golden runes were densely packed, like the golden wings of a golden-winged rock. A domineering and fierce aura suddenly spread out from Du Xiaofu's body, causing the space to tremble. Then, as Du Xiaofu's hand seal streaked across the space, a golden light erupted, illuminating the sky. It was like a golden bomb had exploded at the entrance of the Du household. Rumble, golden runes and mysterious runes overflowed. Qi waves surged to the sky. A large area of space was directly swept out, leaving behind traces of a vacuum. The ground exploded, and the spear lights shattered. It was a terrifying scene. The terrifying golden energy was incomparably overbearing. It spread out in all directions like a shockwave in the void. The 36 strangely connected figures were very strong, but Du Xiaofu's strength was enough to overcome all of them. They were all submerged by the golden shockwave, and in the end, all of them were swept away. Ah, many miserable shrieks were heard. The 36 figures were fiercely blown away. Some had their ribs broken, some spat out blood, and some had their arms broken. They all fiercely fell dozens of feet away. Their appearance was incomparably miserable. On the square, the purple-robed youth with the mysterious broadsword on his back slightly fluttered. His aura was so domineering that it made people's hearts tremble. The surrounding gazes were dumbfounded as they looked at the domineering figure. They couldn't help but feel a surge of emotions. That youth was so shocking and domineering. At such a young age, his strength was so terrifying. What an impudent brat. Let's join forces and suppress him. We can't let him go. Among the crowd of Du household, there was an old man with an ugly expression. His eyes were malicious and cold. If the Du household couldn't even protect their own entrance, how could they protect the country in the future? The old man was the first to leap into the sky. An extraordinary aura erupted from his body. He waved his hand and immediately pounced towards Du Xiaofu. Suppress that brat. We can't let him go. Many of the Du household's experts leaped into the sky. Runes surged, and various kinds of attacks were launched. Everyone took action together. All the attacks were aimed at Du Xiaofu. They wanted to join forces and suppress Du Xiaofu. Chapter 423. Ha 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 ha, Du Xiaofu suddenly raised his head and laughed heartily. His laughter was accompanied by profound energy, and swept out like a sudden clap of thunder. The sound waves were like waves of air that spread out in the sky above the imperial capital. Suddenly, the laughter stopped, and a chill spread out in his eyes that were suffused with a golden light. He shouted loudly, "What a Du household, today I want to see if you can do anything to me." As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, a golden halo suddenly wrapped around his body. His arms shook and he rose from the ground, like a rock being born. Soaring into the sky, he punched out a fist imprint, the air waves soaring to the sky. Bang! The old man who attacked first was directly smashed down from the sky by Du Xiaofu. His body was like a meteorite crashing into the square, and he was stuck in the ground, unable to get up at all. Only large cracks spread out. Bang bang, Du Xiaofu's figure was like a deity, his footsteps unpredictable. Two burly men fell from the sky at the same time, vomiting blood. Boom! Du Xiaofu stomped on another Du family youth in midair, causing blood to spurt out of his body as he was sent flying. Chi la la, the golden light around Du Xiaofu's body exploded, like a shockwave. More than 10 Du family people were directly shaken from the sky to the ground, their noses bruised and their faces swollen as they screamed incessantly. Ayo! Roar! Some of the Du family people activated their pulse spirits. Beast shadows entrenched themselves, roaring in the sky with astonishing power. Destroy! Du Xiaofu lightly shouted. Wherever his figure passed, the aura of the golden rock would explode, like a peerless ferocious beast appearing. With a raise of his hand, all the pulse spirits were destroyed into pieces. Pucci, no, with their pulse spirits shattered, many Du family people were seriously injured. One figure after another fell from the sky to the ground of the square. This scene caused the hearts of the spectators in the distance to tremble. There was actually someone who dared to make a move in the Du household. The most shocking thing was that purple-robed youth, who was actually so terrifyingly powerful. Under the purple-robed youth's terrifying strength, the Du household's people were simply no match for him. They were simply swept away. What is the background of this young man, to not even put the Du household in his eyes? This is the first time the Du household has been swept away like this in front of their home. The Du household has been unhindered for so many years. Could it be that this time they have provoked an existence that even they cannot afford to provoke? More and more spectators gathered around, and they were all shocked by the ferocious scene. Lightning fist. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out from within the Du manor. Following which, an old man's figure soared into the sky and appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. Runes spread around his body, and one could faintly see that his body was accompanied by some lightning. Boom! The old man's fist shot out, accompanied by flashes of lightning. It was like a small ball of lightning, carrying a terrifying energy to block Du Xiaofu. The vast power spread across the sky, causing the hearts of the surrounding people to tremble and their souls to palpitate. The elder is here, he will definitely be able to capture that brat. As the terrifying aura spread out, a large number of pale-faced and scarred Du family members, who were incomparably miserable, revealed a joyous expression. It seems to be an expert from the Du family. Can that purple-robed youth still withstand it? The Du family is definitely not to be underestimated. The surrounding spectators were instantly worried for Du Xiaofu. The arrival of the powerful and terrifying aura meant that the Du family's expert had arrived. No one would doubt the strength of the Du household. Before the lightning fist, the surrounding space suddenly trembled, as if there was an invisible energy of the heavens and earth fluctuating. Finally, with an astonishing speed, accompanied by the pressure of the lightning, it suddenly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu's chest. Martial Lord Nirvana Realm. Du Xiaofu's eyes moved. The Martial Lord Realm's Nirvana Realm cultivation was not bad, especially the power of thunder and lightning. It seemed that many disciples of the Du family had the power of thunder and lightning in their martial arts. With a wave of his hand, golden light erupted. Du Xiaofu resisted the power of lightning, and a domineering aura erupted, blocking the terrifying fist. Boom! When the two energies collided, the golden runes and the lightning radiance wreaked havoc and exploded. The surrounding space immediately collapsed and a gale swept out. The energy runes did not dissipate in the collision. Instead, they suddenly blossomed with dazzling light. The younger generation is not allowed to be presumptuous in front of the Du household. The runes were dazzling, and the figure of the old man took the opportunity to appear in the air in front of Du Xiaofu. A powerful and terrifying aura filled the sky, passing through the obstruction of space, and turned into a huge light screen. Accompanied by the flickering of lightning, it once again enveloped Du Xiaofu. Martial Lord Nirvana Realm, you are not qualified to be arrogant in front of me. Du Xiaofu coldly snorted, and immediately formed a seal with his hand. Runes rapidly surged, and in the end, they rapidly condensed into the shadow of a dragon. The space suddenly fluctuated, and green and red runes filled the sky, and a huge shadow of the Scarlet Cloud Dragon swept out. Roar! The Scarlet Cloud Dragon roared, and light overflowed, causing the surrounding space to surge like waves. The ripples spread, and the aura was like the king of all beasts. The shadow of the Scarlet Cloud Dragon appeared in the sky, and a monstrous aura spread out in an instant, causing the surrounding space to become distorted, and the surrounding space to tremble. Such a terrifying aura caused many people's expressions to change. It turned out that the purple-robed youth's strength had reached such a terrifying level. In the blink of an eye, the profound cloud Scarlet Flood Dragon's phantom directly engulfed the former's lightning screen. As they collided in midair, a muffled thunder-like sound immediately resounded. A terrifying force swept out, causing the space to violently tremble. Roar! The dragon roared, and the sound waves shook the sky. The terrifying aura caused people's hearts to tremble, and then it ruthlessly slammed into the lightning screen, and a terrifying force swept out, surging and terrifying. With such a terrifying energy pressure, the air in the surrounding space of the square was crushed and scattered, forming a vacuum. Rumble, then, under everyone's shocked gazes, the enormous shadow of the scarlet cloud dragon destroyed the lightning screen, and dazzling green and red runes burst out, suppressing the sky. Crackle, the lightning screen of the Dew family elder was deadlocked for a moment, before it was also destroyed, and turned into lightning runes that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, scattering everywhere. Poochie, the old man's body was also sent flying. His body finally landed on the ground, and he staggered back a dozen steps before stabilizing his body. Wherever the old man's feet passed, the ground cracked and collapsed. After that, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Immediately after, the aura on his body withered, and his eyes revealed a look of shock. Even the elder was defeated. The crowd trembled. The Dew family elder was actually blasted down. Just how powerful was the purple-robed youth? No matter who you are, since you dare to be so impudent in my Dew household, I will definitely not let you off today. Just at this moment, an indifferent and dignified voice suddenly slowly came out from the Dew household. Then, the space in the Dew household fluctuated, and a group of figures appeared in the air from the Dew household. This group of figures were mostly elders, but there were also women and a few middle-aged men. Following the appearance of this group of figures, the sky and earth inexplicably trembled, as if the air in the entire space was frozen. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's eyes slightly raised, and his pale golden pupils slightly shrank. Those are the elders of the Dew family. Even more experts of the Dew family have come out. The surrounding onlookers were shocked. Under the pressure of that aura, the profound energy in their bodies was blocked, and their heartbeats accelerated. A purple-robed youth actually attracted so many experts of the Dew household. One by one, the experts of the Dew household stood in the air, looking at the dozens of people on the ground who were riddled with injuries. It was a tragic sight. Many of them had broken bones and were dripping with blood, and miserable shrieks continuously sounded out. This caused the gazes of all the experts to twitch. Since when had such a thing happened in the dignified Dew household of the Protector King? Just as the elite practitioners from the Dew family appeared, a middle-aged burly man with distinct facial features stared at the figure of the purple-robed youth with a broadsword on his back in midair. Immediately, a violent fluctuation gushed out from his eyes. Brat, to be so impudent in my Dew household, you're courting death. Seeing that the Dew family disciples on the ground were riddled with injuries, a yellow-robed elder roared. If he did not capture this youth, the Dew household would lose all face in the future. It could be seen that the youth was also an extremely powerful and abnormal individual. His figure flashed out, and immediately formed a blood vein spirit. Roar, runes flickered and formed a blood vein spirit. The yellow-robed elder's body was instantly condensed into a giant tiger vein spirit that was covered in a dazzling light. It looked like a tiger eyeing its prey, ready to pounce. It was incomparably powerful and shook one's soul. The yellow-robed elder merged with the vein spirit. At the same time, the aura of a martial lord at the peak of the Nirvana realm erupted. Compared to the elder who attacked just now, his aura was even stronger. Activating the vein spirit, it was even more ferocious and terrifying, suppressing the sky. Roar! The tiger's roar shook the sky, and its aura was terrifying. In an instant, it pounced towards Du Xiaofu. Under the ferocious aura of a tiger pouncing on its prey, the tiger's claws waved, causing the ground to crack. Its power was ferocious and shocking, as if it could tear Du Xiaofu into pieces. Above the tiger vein spirit, a dazzling rune bloomed, like a volcanic eruption, drowning a large area of space. Roar! Right at this moment, a soul-shaking tiger roar suddenly sounded out in the sky. Under this roar, the ferocious tiger vein soul phantasm also paused for a moment. Everyone in the sky felt fear for no reason, and their profound energy was blocked. Xiao Yu, continue writing. There are only a few hours left. Brothers, don't forget to send flowers. Otherwise, they will be cleared by the system tomorrow. Roar! Chapter 424. Following that even more ferocious and terrifying tiger roar, a large number of gazes could not help but look up. Immediately, they saw a gigantic black flying tiger flapping its wings in midair. That gigantic black tiger was surrounded by a dazzling light. Its body was pitch black, and black runes soared into the sky. The tiger's roar stirred up spatial ripples that soared into the sky. It was as if a huge wave was surging, shaking the heavens and the earth. The gigantic tiger flapped its wings, and a terrifying air wave swept out, bringing with it a tornado-like spatial airflow that swept across the vast sky. It was incomparably domineering, causing the surrounding spatial airflow to undulate endlessly. It was as fast as lightning and inexplicably ferocious. Roar! This gigantic black tiger swooped down like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. Its speed was much faster than the pulse soul gigantic tiger activated by the old man. It opened its mouth ferociously and roared, as if it did not take the pulse soul phantom seriously at all. The figure that swooped down like a black thunderbolt raised its tiger claw and waved it. Overbearing golden runes flickered, and a tiger claw that was extremely domineering directly crashed onto the pulse soul phantom that seemed to have been crushed into a daze at this moment. The gigantic black tiger's claw landed on the pulse soul phantom, as if it wanted to tear the vast sky apart. Accompanied by a domineering and ferocious wave that swept across, it instantly brought about a huge gust of wind that swept out and spread out, shaking the surrounding space until it was on the verge of collapse. Swish! Swish! The ferocious pulse soul phantom actually had no power to resist under the gigantic black tiger's claw at this moment. It was directly torn into rune fragments by the gigantic black tiger's claw. Immediately after, the body of the martial lord at the peak of the Nirvana realm was also sent flying. What kind of tiger demonic beast is this? The martial lord at the peak of the Nirvana realm spat out blood from his mouth. He only stabilized his body after a few hundred feet. His pale face was filled with shock. The power on the gigantic black tiger was like the supreme existence of the tiger clan. Just now, his pulse soul was actually unable to resist. Just how terrifyingly powerful was the bloodline of the gigantic black tiger? One must know that his pulse soul phantom of the tiger clan also had an extremely powerful bloodline. Little tiger has benefited greatly. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at the little tiger that appeared in front of him. The little tiger had broken through to the mysterious level of the Beast Lord realm not long ago and was already able to easily defeat a martial lord realm expert of the Du royal residence at the peak of the Nirvana realm. With such strength, it could definitely be considered as abnormal among the demonic beasts. What kind of demonic beast is this? What a terrifying demonic beast! It can affect one's meridians and souls, making it impossible for one to fight against it. All eyes were fixed on the giant ink-black tiger that had suddenly appeared. Its body was densely covered with ink-black scales, as if it was cast from the deep night sky. The deep golden color was faintly jumping. Its enormous and intimidating body was no less than 100 feet. It was sturdy and mighty, and its tiger claws created clouds when it stepped on the air. On the body of the ink-black tiger, an earth-shattering might spread out. It emitted dazzling ink-black runes that oppressed others like a mountain. It glared at them covetously, and its pressure surged, causing them to tremble with fear. Brother, on the back of the giant ink-black tiger, Du Xiaoqing jumped down. Her green dress fluttered in the wind, and her ethereal big eyes were like twinkling stars. She was like a lotus that had just sprouted, elegant and pure. But at this moment, when she looked around and saw a large group of people surrounding her brother, anger gradually surged out from her pure and innocent eyes. Are you okay? Du Xiaoyao jumped from the back of the king's scaled demonic tiger to Du Xiaofu's shoulder. Her pale golden spiritual eyes glanced around, and she didn't pay much attention to it. I'm fine, just some small troubles, Du Xiaofu said softly. That terrifying black tiger is with that purple-robed youth. That purple-robed youth's background must be extraordinary. Everyone could see the relationship between the terrifying ink-black tiger and Du Xiaofu, and they were once again shocked. To be able to have such a terrifying demonic beast following beside him, one could imagine his background. Normal forces definitely wouldn't be able to take out such a thing. One by one, the experts of the Du family floated in the air. At this moment, their hearts trembled as they looked at the terrifying ink-black tiger. Du Xiaofu looked at the surroundings of the Du household, and then his gaze swept around. His foot stomped on the ground, and his figure instantly swept onto the back of the little tiger. He slightly raised his head and said to Du Xiaoqing, "Little Qing, let's go back." Humph. Du Xiaoqing's delicate face was filled with anger. She was originally happily shopping when suddenly, second brother Du Xiaoyao felt that her brother was in trouble and immediately rushed over. At this moment, seeing that her brother was about to go back, she had no choice but to turn around and leap onto the back of the little tiger, intending to leave. This little child is extraordinary, this demonic tiger is also extraordinary. But since you've come to the Du household today, then stay for a few more days. Among the experts of the Du family, an old man in his 70s leapt out and said while looking at Du Xiaofu. The second elder is also here. It's rare for him to show his face. It's the second elder, he's about to make a move. Looking at the old man in his 70s, the experts of the Du family below were filled with anticipation. With the second elder making a move, they would definitely be able to capture the tiger. The second elder was known as the #1 person under the martial king realm. He was famous throughout the entire empire, and was the existence closest to the martial king realm. He was the top expert of the Du household. I'm just looking around. If I want to leave, I'll leave. If I want to stay, I'll stay. What does it have to do with you? Don't bother me, or else, I won't be polite. Du Xiaofu stepped on the giant tiger, his purple robe fluttering in the wind, a broadsword on his back. His eyes began to turn sharp. Although today's encounter with the Du household did not have much to do with them, he could not help but have some expectations for them. Little child boasting shamelessly, do you really think that there's no one in the Du household? A group of old men shouted loudly, their auras surging. Waves of terrifying auras erupted, causing the entire space to tremble. Some old men channeled the power of lightning, faintly forming dark clouds in the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in mid-air, their auras suppressing the vast sky. What a powerful Du household! Amongst the spectators, everyone was trembling in fear. The experts of the Du household were not just for show. There were many martial marquee experts, and there were even experts scattered outside. In the entire empire, who could shake such a colossus like the Du household? Little child's temper is not small. Come to the Du household to cultivate your body and mind for a period of time. It will definitely be beneficial for your future cultivation. On the face of the 70-year-old second elder, there were some creases squirming. His tone was casual, but everyone could hear that the meaning behind his words was to capture Du Xiaofu and bring him back to the Du household to be imprisoned. As his voice fell, lightning runes suddenly erupted from the body of the old second elder. In the sky, the dark clouds suddenly trembled. Silver snakes flickered, and its power suppressed the vast sky. A lightning palm print condensed, and the old man's figure appeared like a ghost. His aura was majestic and vast, and it suddenly suppressed Du Xiaofu, Little Tiger, Du Xiaoqing and the rest. Peak of the complete martial marquee stage. Du Xiaofu's eyes narrowed, a frightening and severe glint flashed across his eyes. Suddenly, he said to Du Xiaoqing, Little Qing, leave them alive. Yes, brother. Du Xiaoqing understood. She was already angry, and at this moment, she could no longer hold back her anger. Before her lovely voice had completely faded, she had already disappeared from the tiger's back. In this short period of time, when her figure reappeared, it was a graceful green girl's figure that seemed to be able to affect time, and strangely appeared in front of the second elder's lightning palm print. So many people are bullying my brother, I will not let you off. Du Xiaoqing was furious. Her slender hand reached out and clenched into a fist. Green light erupted from her body, and her fist directly collided with the second elder's lightning palm print. In a flash, the fist and the palm print directly collided. At this moment, the second elder seemed to have sensed something. His old face suddenly changed drastically. Soon after, he involuntarily spat out blood from his mouth. Then, the lightning runes around his body directly exploded. His old body was like an old bird with broken wings as he was violently smashed down. Finally, he was heavily smashed into the hard stone ground below. Boom! The ground trembled, as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was splitting. The second elder of the Du household, who was hailed as the #1 person under the Martial King stage, was smashed down like an ant in front of everyone's eyes. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds, and was unmatched. The surrounding space abruptly turned deathly silent. Everyone's eyes were lifeless, especially the Du family members. Their expectant gazes had already turned into shock and fear. Goo goo. After a brief moment of silence, the surrounding onlookers looked at each other, and sucked in a breath of cold air as they looked at the beautiful girl in green. In the air, the group of Du family experts' gazes suddenly turned to shock and fear. Everyone looked at the girl in green, as if they had seen a ghost. And all of you. Du Xiaoqing's charming face was cold, and her tender voice was clear and ethereal. Her entire body was wrapped in a dazzling green light, and her demonic and holy aura was enchanting. She actually disappeared from her original spot like a ghost, and her afterimage was difficult for people to see clearly. When her figure appeared again, she had already appeared in front of the group of Du family experts. Rumble. Green light erupted, and her delicate hands danced. Du Xiaoqing furiously attacked. The mysterious green runes on the talisman were dazzling, and her aura solidified, suppressing the entire sky. Everyone could feel the terrifying aura that had erupted from the graceful figure's body, and the pressure caused the profound energy in their bodies to stagnate. Their meridians and souls did not dare to move, and their souls were afraid. Bang! An old man was smacked down from the air by Du Xiaoqing. His blood was dripping, and it was a horrible sight to behold. The huge force swept across, and the sky also shook violently. Chi-la-la. Almost like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten weeds, several figures were sent flying like kites with broken wings. One figure after another fiercely fell from the sky, like meteorites crashing down, and hit the ground of the square. Bang bang bang. Another few big men, old men and women, could not escape from their misfortune. They could not even escape, and simply could not resist. Their bodies fell from the sky one after another. Chapter 425. Low muffled sounds continued to ring out as the air trembled endlessly. Subsequently, the surrounding spectators saw the high and mighty experts of the Du household falling from the sky one after another as if they were unable to withstand a single blow. They did not even have the strength to retaliate. Pucci, the experts of the Du family fell to the ground one after another, causing the ground to tremble and crack. Blood spurted out from their mouths as their faces turned pale. It was simply a tragic sight. Boom! A martial lord of the Nirvana realm was smashed into the coiling dragon pillar outside the Du household. Instantly, the pillar broke and crumbled. Bang! A martial lord of the mysterious realm was smashed into the pillar of the Du household's red door. The majestic door of the Du household was smashed into pieces, causing the courtyard walls to rumble and crumble. In the end, it was reduced to rubble. In the air, no one was able to resist the green figure that passed by. She was unparalleled. Within the Du household, many figures were alarmed as they flew out. There were also many figures that rushed out of the Du household. Their gazes were trembling as they were at a loss for what to do. Their eyes were filled with shock. Among the crowd below, a young girl in a light blue dress stared at the miserable state of the Du family's experts on the ground. Her eyes were filled with shock, and when she saw the beautiful figure in green, her expression changed drastically as she shouted, "Xiaoqing, stop! Quickly stop! In the air, Du Shaoqing heard a familiar voice and stopped attacking. She saw the young girl below. It was Du Yinxin from the Tianmu Academy. Ah, Yinxin, why are you here? Du Shaoqing was puzzled as she didn't expect Du Yinxin to appear here. This is my home. Naturally, I'm here. Du Yinxin smiled bitterly. She had seen Du Shaoqing's strength before. Even a martial king wasn't her match. In the entire Du household, there weren't many people who could stop Du Shaoqing. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had also appeared in the air, the expression in Du Yinxin's eyes quietly fluctuated. Perhaps she already had a rough idea of the situation before her eyes. I didn't think that there would be such an expert from the beast race descending upon my Du palace. This has really opened my eyes. Suddenly, from within the Du household, a deep and resounding voice sounded out. Following which, a majestic figure appeared in mid-air. The majestic figure that appeared was wrapped in multicolored light. Extremely terrifying fluctuations rippled around his body. His aura caused the hearts of the surrounding onlookers to tremble. Within the multicolored light was a large man in his 50s. He looked extremely old, and his entire body was wrapped in multicolored light. Symbols faintly fluctuated, and resplendent silver snake radiance was released. The terrifying aura was like that of destruction, making people feel intimidated. Greetings, Patriarch. When the people of the Du family saw the figure in the air, they immediately bowed respectfully as if they had seen hope. Protect the king. That's to protect the king. The gazes of countless onlookers trembled slightly, and they were filled with awe and respect. The Protector King was the core protector of the entire empire. His status was only below the emperor, and he was respected by all citizens. When people saw the Protector King, they were incredibly excited and kowtowed to him. Chi, behind the Protector King, within the multicolored light, there were several tall and straight young figures standing in the air. All of them had extraordinary auras and a noble demeanor. Du Shaoqing looked at the Protector King who had suddenly appeared. Her clear eyes were suffused with a green light. She looked straight at the Protector King, and said with a tender snort, "For Yin Xian's sake, I'll spare you. You better not provoke me and my brother again. I'm not here to fight. Forget it, if you want to leave, then leave." The Protector King looked at Du Shaoqing, but his gaze fell on Du Xiaofu, who was on the back of the giant ink-black tiger. On the back of the little tiger, Du Xiaofu looked at the Protector King, who was wrapped in multicolored light, and then looked at the surrounding sky. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he said to Du Shaoqing, "Little Qing, let's go." Humph. Du Shaoqing gave a tender snort at King Wu, and then she leapt into the air and landed beside Du Xiaofu. Numerous gazes from all around looked at Du Shaoqing, and the light in their eyes fluctuated violently. Exactly what kind of terrifying power was contained within that graceful and slender figure? She was actually able to single-handedly defeat a group of Du family practitioners. In the end, even the King Protector was alerted. That kind of strength was too terrifying. "Young man, what is your name, and where are you from?" Wrapped in multicolored light, the Protector King was clearly asking Du Xiaofu. His deep and resounding voice echoed in the air. "My name is Du Xiaofu, and I'm from the Stone City's Du family." Du Xiaofu looked at the Protector King from afar, and his voice was like thunder, rumbling in the air. He did not hide anything. The Stone City's Du family was definitely not a disgrace, and there was nothing to hide. Du Xiaofu, and I'm from the Stone City's Du family. As Du Xiaofu's voice rang out, it was like a clap of thunder to many Du family experts. In an instant, it caused the pale faces of many people to change, and many of their gazes were fixated on Du Xiaofu. However, there were still many Du family juniors, servants, and branch family members who were at a loss. Not many of them knew about the relationship between the Stone City's Du family and the Du household, and they did not know that Du Xiaofu's existence was related to a major event back then. Du Xiaofu's voice was mixed with profound energy, and it was clearly heard by many people. Suddenly, the gazes of many trembled. "It's him, He's Du Xiaofu, the number one on the Tianwu Academy's inner martial ranking, Du Xiaofu. Is it him? The Du Xiaofu who is rumored to have refined a high-grade Dao artifact and attracted a lightning tribulation. So it's that ferocious fellow. No wonder he's so powerful. He's indeed incomparably ferocious. Even this ferocious youth has come to the capital. I heard that Du Xiaofu has outstanding talent and is incomparably terrifying. He truly lives up to his reputation. Voices of discussion immediately rang out. Du Xiaofu's name was not unfamiliar in the imperial capital. Soon after, the news spread out in all directions. Stone City's Du family, is that the branch family? Another terrifying fellow has appeared. Someone from the Du family exclaimed. Their hearts trembled as they looked at the valiant and domineering purple-robed figure on the back of the black tiger. However, there were even more people who did not know about the Stone City's Du family, and even more so, they did not know about the matters back then. Especially the matter that happened less than 20 years ago. It had become a taboo in the Du household, and only those who knew about it knew about it. Those who did not know would never speak of it. That matter had long been sealed by the clan, and no one was allowed to leak it out. Little tiger, let's go back. Du Xiaofu's expression was indifferent as he lowered his head and said to the little tiger. Walala, the little tiger flapped its wings, and a terrifying wave of chi swept down. On its wings, a circle of golden talisman patterns wrapped around it, spreading a domineering and intimidating aura. The floor in front of the Du household was torn apart and covered in dust. Roar! The black tiger flapped its wings and left. Its voice was like thunder, and its pressure was rolling, causing people to tremble in fear. Father, why did you let them go? In mid-air, behind the king protector, an extraordinary youth asked. That beast clan girl is too strong. I don't have the confidence to keep her here alone. Your granduncle is also in seclusion, and the great ancestor is wandering without a trace, the protector king said softly. His eyes flickered like lightning, and then he muttered, as expected, a tiger father will not beget a dog son. Talent is extraordinary, but it's a pity. Countless gazes in the surroundings watched the huge ink black tiger leave. They looked at the graceful green figure and the tall and straight back of the purple-robed man with a broad sword on his back. Their gazes trembled as ripples rose in their eyes like stormy waves. The Lord Protector's residence, the dignified Du family, had been swept away by someone today. Even their residence had been destroyed. Since the existence of the Lord Protector's residence, such a thing had never happened before. However, not only did it happen today, but the man and woman also left right after. That girl is a beast clan expert. Her strength is too strong, and I don't even have the confidence to protect the king. I had no choice but to let them go. Someone predicted that if the Protector King had absolute confidence in suppressing that terrifying girl, it wouldn't be easy for Du Xiaofu and that girl to leave today. Each and every one of the Du household's martial marquis experts could be considered as experts in the entire empire. But in front of that young girl, they were heavily injured to the point of not being able to retaliate. Just how shocking was that? That young girl's strength was definitely at the king level. The number one on Tianwu Academy's martial ranking, Du Xiaofu, appeared in the imperial capital, barged into the Du household, and swept away all the experts there. This news spread like a thunderclap, and not long after, the entire imperial capital was shaken. In an instant, the news was like a thunderclap, attracting the attention of countless forces. This news also caused many forces to search for a certain aura. Perhaps this matter would be the fuse that would cause a commotion in the imperial capital. Dusk. Between the horizon and the imperial capital, Dragon City, a simple and vigorous curve could be seen. The setting sun emitted a red glow. When Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, and the little tiger returned to the guest inn, it was already dusk. In the guest room, Ouyang Shuang had yet to return, and Du Xiaofu didn't see Zhang Jin either. Instead, Zhen Qingchuan's voice sounded in his ears, "Kid, there are quite a few people here who are too strong for you. You should restrain yourself. Just now, there were quite a few people spying on you." Following his words, Zhen Qingquan's illusory figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. 7:00, the last 3 hours. Brothers who still have fresh flowers, please give them to me. Little you, continue to write. Tomorrow, continue to erupt. Chapter 426. There seems to be quite a number of martial king experts in the Imperial Dragon City. Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes. Just now, outside the Du residence, he had also detected quite a number of obscure auras. Those auras should all be at the martial king level. Although that girl Du Xiaoqing is powerful, it's still better to be careful. In the imperial capital of an empire, there may be hidden martial emperor experts. If you provoke them, you'll have to bear the consequences. Zhen Qingchun said. Du Xiaofu shrugged his shoulders, smiled slightly, and did not speak. As night fell, the streets of the imperial capital were still bustling with people. Ouyang Shuang had finally returned to the inn. Upon seeing Du Xiaofu, Ouyang Shuang's large and beautiful eyes tightly stared at Du Xiaofu, an extraordinary splendor blossoming in her beautiful eyes. She was slightly shocked as she said, "Truly, wherever you go, trouble will follow. Even the Du household has been swept away by you. Congratulations, you've only been in the capital for a day, and your name has already shaken the capital, your name is already well known outside." Du Xiaofu bitterly smiled, looked at Ouyang Shuang and said, "I originally only wanted to take a look at the Du residence. I didn't intend to do anything. Who knew that the guard wouldn't let me see?" In a moment of anger, I replied, and the Du residents took the initiative to attack. They kept pestering me, so, okay, no need to explain. It's fine as long as you're fine. Ouyang Shuang's beautiful eyebrows slightly relaxed. She also knew why Du Xiaofu wanted to go to the Du residence. Back then, the matter of his family being forced to separate might have something to do with the Du residence. In his heart, he already felt that the Du residence was inseparable from the matter that caused his family to be separated. He couldn't let go of his heart, so he wanted to go to the Du residence to take a look. That was why he fought with the Du residence in a moment of anger. Fortunately, he was fine now, so she was relieved. As her voice faded, Ouyang Shuang's beautiful eyes trembled. She continued to look at Du Xiaofu with a faint trace of worry in her eyes. Today, because of Xiaoqing, the Du residents did not dare to do anything. But this time, you've completely offended the Du residents. You have to be careful in the future. Yes, I understand. Du Xiaofu nodded, but in any case, he didn't plan to have too much involvement with the Du household. In the future, he estimated that there wouldn't be many opportunities to bump into the Du household. Is Zhang Jin here yet? Ouyang Shuang got down to business. No. Du Xiaofu shook his head. He hadn't seen Zhang Jin since he came back. That's strange. Ouyang Shuang's pretty eyebrows were filled with suspicion. Calculating the time, Zhang Jin should have been able to find out the news long ago. With the academy's badge, it would not be too difficult for Zhang Jin to find their lodging. Her red lips parted slightly. Her expression was somewhat worried as she softly said, "They have not come to find us even though it is already so late. Could something have happened? Let's wait and see." Du Xiaofu said. At this moment, they could only wait. After all, this matter was between the Li family and the Qian family. It would not be good to directly barge into the Li family. If they barged into the Li family, it would be even more difficult to clean up. They could only wait for Zhang Jin to bring back news. In the room, after Du Xiaofu and Ouyang Shuang chatted for a while, Ouyang Shuang returned to the room next door. She and Du Xiaoqing shared a room, while Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoyao and Little Tiger naturally shared a room. Night shrouded the sky. It was the end of the month. Tonight, the moon was dim and the stars were bright. The night was hazy and dusky. In the dark night, a black figure streaked across the sky. Without a trace of fluctuation, he quietly appeared on the roof of the guest inn. Like a ghost, he flashed and disappeared without a trace. Outside the window of a guest room, the black figure bent over and looked through the gap of the window. In the dim room, the light was extinguished. On the bed, a young man in a purple robe with a purple broadsword on his back was sitting cross-legged. He was adjusting his breathing and did not notice the black figure's approach. "Kid, we don't know each other and we have no grudges. However, for the sake of the Wolf Fang escort agency, I have no choice but to sacrifice you." The black figure's head was covered with a black robe. He gently pushed open the door, his eyes flashing. "Chi!" Suddenly, the black figure was like a flash of lightning. In an instant, he appeared in front of the young man in a purple robe who was sitting cross-legged on the bed. A fierce claw was immediately grabbed at the young man in a purple robe. Runes flashed. If this claw were to land, it would be enough to crush the young man into pieces. "Robbery!" Suddenly, a clear and delicate voice rang out. The black figure's claw was about to land on the young man in a purple robe. However, at this critical moment, a green lightning suddenly flashed behind him. The entire space suddenly froze, causing him to be unable to move. "Oh no, there's a strong person." The black figure's face changed. He was shocked as if he had a premonition. However, at the same time, it was already too late for him to dodge. His shoulder trembled and a terrifying force surged. A slender claw was directly grabbed at his body. A terrifying force directly destroyed the profound chi in his body. His fierce rune claw was shattered. Then, the profound chi in his body stopped and was instantly restrained. Chi. The room was brightly lit. Outside the door, a petite and tall lady walked in and gently closed the door. Her peerless face and cold temperament made it impossible for strangers to enter. The black figure looked around. At this moment, there was a black kitten and a golden little macaque in the room. 4 pairs of eyes glanced at him indifferently. He did not know why, but the 4 pairs of eyes made his hair stand on end. The black kitten's gaze, in particular, made the black-clothed figure's hair stand on end. "Quick, hand over the Qinquan bag." Du Xiaoqing's face appeared in front of the black figure. Her pure and innocent eyes were currently filled with the expectation of robbery. She extended her hand and lifted the black robe of the black figure, revealing his scarred face. He was over 40 years old and had a muscular body that was yellowish. He gave off an explosive aura and the scar on his face made him look even more ferocious. However, at this moment, he was like a little chick in front of an eagle while being detained by Du Xiaoqing. "Little Qing, you've restrained him. How is he going to give you the Qinquan bag?" On the bed, Du Xiaofu opened his gently shut eyes. A faint glow flickered within them as he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His body immediately leaped off the bed as his gaze landed on the large scarred man. That gradually clear gaze of his caused the large scarred man's heart to emit an uneasy feeling for no reason. "That's true. Then I'll take it myself." Du Xiaoqing smiled and immediately nodded her head. She directly took out the Qinquan bag from the large scarred man's chest. Looking at Du Xiaoqing, the large scarred man's eyes trembled. This seemingly slender and delicate girl was actually a terrifying expert. He was like an ant that could not be contended with. Only at this moment did he understand why Li Yu had asked him for help and not the experts of the Li family. Perhaps Li Yu had specially set him up. "Who are you and why do you want to kill me?" Du Xiaofu looked at the large scarred man and asked in an indifferent manner. A martial marquis of the mysterious level should not be an ordinary person. During the day, Du Xiaofu had already noticed that someone was secretly following him. Sure enough, someone was secretly trying to harm him at night. This caused a chill to appear in Du Xiaofu's eyes. A person who could make a martial marquis of the mysterious level assassinate him would not have a simple background. He did not know who would bear such a grudge against him. "Since I've been captured by you, kill me if you want. This time, I've been tricked. I asked for it if I lost my life." The large scarred man looked at Du Xiaofu. His scarred face twitched slightly. This time, he had failed miserably. How could these people let him go? Since he was going to die, he might as well die quickly. If you don't say it, I have more than 100 ways to make you say it. Why do you have to suffer? Ouyang Shuang looked at the large scarred man with a cold temperament. No one would suspect that behind that beautiful face, there was no mercy. The large scarred man looked at Ouyang Shuang. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and said, "My name is Dark Wolf, the head of the Wolf Fang escort agency. The third young master of the Li family, Li Yu, asked me to come." Li Yu. Hearing this name, Ouyang Shuang frowned slightly. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was not too surprised. He looked at Dark Wolf and asked, "He asked you to kill us?" "To make you disappear and hand the two girls over to him," Dark Wolf replied. At this point, there was no need to hide anything. Moreover, he did not have much of a relationship with Li Yu. Hearing Dark Wolf's words, Du Xiaofu's gaze wavered. He looked at Dark Wolf and continued to ask, "With your cultivation and strength, you don't have to risk your life for him, right? This is just a condition. He's just a second generation. He doesn't have the qualifications to make me risk my life for him. I promised to help him settle this matter, and he handed over the business of the Li family to my Wolf Fang escort agency. That's all." Dark Wolf said in a deep voice. If it wasn't for the Wolf Fang escort agency, why would he care about a second generation like Li Yu? "I don't care about the reason. You wanted to kill me. Now that you've fallen into my hands, I naturally won't let you go. This is very fair." Du Xiaofu took a deep breath and exhaled. He looked at Dark Wolf and said, "Tell me a reason to let you live. Otherwise, I don't mind taking your life." Dark Wolf looked at Du Xiaofu. He had lived a life of licking blood from the edge of the blade. He was experienced and knowledgeable. From this purple-robed young man, he felt a faint murderous aura that only existed in people who had been baptized by killing. This proved that this young man was definitely not comparable to those second generations in the imperial capital. Therefore, Dark Wolf did not doubt this young man's words. To be honest, he did not want to die. Except for those who wanted to commit suicide, no one would want to die. He was no exception. Chapter 427. Immobilized by Du Xiaoqing's restraints, the Dark Wolf stared at Du Xiaofu, twitching inwardly as he said, "If you don't kill me, my life is yours from now on. I accept this reason. Remember, from now on, your life is mine." Du Xiaofu nodded and then gestured to Du Xiaoqing, saying, "Little Qing, let him go." Hearing this, Du Xiaoqing released the restraints in her hands. The Dark Wolf stared at Du Xiaofu, confusion in his eyes, as if he had not expected the other to let him go so easily. Feeling a little uneasy, he asked, "You're willing to believe me so easily?" "I choose to believe you." Du Xiaofu gazed at the Dark Wolf, a faint smile on his lips, but there was a hint of coldness in this smile. He said, "Because, if you are not worthy of my trust, I can take your life at any time. At that time, you will suffer a fate worse than death." Hearing Du Xiaofu's final words, the Dark Wolf felt a chill in his heart. At night, the stars twinkled in the sky. A figure leapt out from a guest inn, streaking across the sky like a ghost, and then disappearing into the night. Protector King's Manor, Du family. In the Great Hall, a large group of elders and burly men with extraordinary auras were now mostly pale, looking wretched and extremely disheveled. That Du Xiaofu actually dared to go against the main tribe. We must not let him go. Going against the main tribe is treason. We must not tolerate it. Who would have thought that Du Tingshuan's son would actually be so powerful? With that mysterious beast girl by his side, it will not be easy to deal with that brat. Du Xiaofu's wings have already formed. If we can take him into our Du family, it will undoubtedly benefit our Du family. A pair of father and son from a branch clan. Each of them is stronger than the other. I reckon they must have obtained a great opportunity. Maybe some treasure has appeared in the branch clan. We have underestimated them. I reckon that some treasure must have appeared in the branch clan. That father and son pair are too bizarre. We should go to the branch clan and take a look. If our main clan can obtain that treasure, that would be the true glory of our clan. Someone suggested that they should go to Stone City's Dew family to take a look. Stone City's Dew family had produced a terrifying pair of father and son. Perhaps a treasure had appeared in the branch family. If the main family could obtain it, the Dew family would definitely flourish. I think we should go to Stone City and take a look. That pair of father and son are both extraordinarily strong. How could such talents appear in the branch clan? There must be something special about the branch clan. The suggestion of that person was met with the agreement of many people. In fact, some of their gazes were even filled with greed. The thought of the innate gifts of that father and son duo, as well as the horrifying beasts that were following them around, was enough to cause one's eyes to turn red. Everyone, can't we think of a way to get Du Xiaofu to join our clan? With his talent, it would be a pity to let him go. A burly man said with a dignified look. That Du Xiaofu is related to that colossus. How can we get involved with him? At that time, we will definitely bring disaster to our entire clan. Today, that Du Xiaofu dared to go against our main clan. This is already treason and heresy. How can we tolerate this? Night fell, and the sky was dotted with sparkling stars. It was like the Milky Way laid on the blue sky, and the faint moonlight illuminated the magnificent palace. I didn't expect that fierce little guy to come to Dragon City. He's really fierce. Turns out he's from Stone City's Du family. Du Tingxian also came from there. Inside the palace, there was a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe. His eyes were like torches. He was quite fat and had a big belly. Although he wasn't very tall, he had a majestic aura that made people feel intimidated. Inside the palace, a woman dressed in an orange-red outfit stood quietly. Her tall and slender legs and slim waist outlined a moving arc. Her elegant temperament was a little cold, and she exuded a nobility that made people not dare to approach her. Her red lips slightly opened as she murmured softly, "Has he come to Dragon City, Imperial Father? What is the origin of Stone City's Du family?" The alluring woman was the eldest princess of the Stone Dragon Empire, Qing Xingnan. As the eldest princess of the Stone Dragon Empire, she didn't know much about a small and remote city like Stone City. Stone City is a small border city at the edge of the barbaric Beast Mountain Range. My Qing family has an ancestral rule that we can't meddle in the affairs of Stone City. It is said that the Protector King's mansion's Du family came from Stone City. And now, there is a Du family that has the same bloodline as the Du family. It is said that a super expert came from Stone City in the past. The dragon-robed middle-aged man's every movement was filled with the aura of an emperor as he said, 20 years ago, a young man called Du Tingxian appeared out of nowhere in Stone City. His talent was astonishing, but in the end, he brought about a great calamity for the Du family. I have received news that this Du Xiaofu is Du Tingshuan's son, and he comes from Stone City's Du family. Du Tingxian and Du Xiaofu are both related to the Du family. Qing Xingnan's brows were slightly furrowed. Her appearance was extremely beautiful, and there was some fluctuation in her eyes. Her body's curves were hazy and undulating, and there was an irresistible temptation in her clear coldness. It was unknown how many men would pursue such a woman. "Xingnan, how are the arrangements? We can't make any mistakes this time." "The people from the Tianhu Empire won't be simple," the man in the dragon robe said softly. His torch-like eyes were rippling with worry. Qing Xingnan nodded and said, "The arrangements are almost done. The younger generation of the various kings' mansions have rushed back. We will be able to fight in 3 days. Sigh, I hope we can resist them this time." The man in the dragon robe narrowed his eyes. He then raised his head to look at Qing Xingnan and said, "How is the Divine Court?" Ever since the incident at the Tianmu Academy, the Divine Court has been the same. The Tianhu Empire is a force of the Sky Snake sect. This time, It is rumored that there are extraordinary people from the Tianhu Empire in the Sky Snake sect. However, this is a matter between the Stone Dragon Empire and the Tianhu Empire, so the Divine Court can't interfere this time. Qing Xingnan said. The Divine Court is probably trying to intimidate the Tianhu Empire. The man in the dragon robe paced with his hands behind his back. Qing Xingnan opened her mouth and said, "Father, you don't have to worry too much. Although the people from the Tianhu Empire are extraordinary, the general of the Jiang family and Gu Xinyan of the Gu family have just come out of the Tianwu Seal realm. Their strength should have improved tremendously. They might be able to resist. The Tianhu Empire has extraordinary people from the Sky Snake sect, but the Du family still has 2 people. They might be able to stop them. The Du family. I hope they can stop them this time." The man in the dragon robe frowned slightly. After a while, his torch-like eyes flickered slightly. He said to Qing Xingnan, "You went to the Tianwu Academy last time. Are you familiar with Du Xiaofu?" Hearing this, Qing Xingnan's bright eyes trembled inwardly. At this moment, she seemed to have thought of something. Her delicate hand involuntarily went to her perky butt. She suppressed the anger on her beautiful face and said to the man in the dragon robe, "Father, I don't have any interactions with that brat. Perhaps my second sister is more familiar with my third brother." "Is that so?" The man in the dragon robe raised his head slightly and said softly, "Since that's the case, let your second sister find that brat tomorrow. Speaking of which, I have met his father several times. He can be considered the son of an old friend. Since I've come to the Dragon City, I naturally have to meet him. Father, that Du Xiaofu just caused a ruckus in the Du family today. If you want to meet that Du Xiaofu tomorrow, I'm afraid the outside world will think too much." Qing Xingnan said with a frown. "I only want to meet the son of an old friend. If the outsiders want to think that way, then so be it." The man in the dragon robe smiled faintly. Although there were no fluctuations of aura coming from his body, at this moment, no one dared to look directly at him. Qing Xingnan raised her eyebrows and a trace of surprise flashed across her bright eyes. She then nodded her head and the corner of her lips curled up into a charming smile. Her smile was so moving that it could cause the downfall of a country. She raised her head and said to the man in the dragon robe, "I understand. I'll look for my second sister tomorrow to make the arrangements." "Stinking brat, last time, you ruined my sect's important matter and seriously injured my junior brother Guyu, causing me to be punished. In the barbaric beast mountain range, you even disrespected me. This time, don't let me find an opportunity, otherwise." Qing Xingnan raised her eyebrows and pouted her delicate red lips. She thought about the secret place that had never been touched by the xenomorph. She still didn't know if that stinking brat had other tricks up his sleeve. In short, she couldn't let that guy off so easily. Chapter 428. So that brat is related to the Du family. What a surprise. That old fellow from the Du family must be having a headache now. In the bamboo forest shrouded by the faint moonlight at night, a skinny and tanned old man gently reclined on a bamboo chair. He smiled slightly, appearing extremely happy. Then, as if recalling something, he said, "It's a pity that the old fellow from the Du family seems to be in closed-door training. If he were here, it would definitely be even more lively. Grandpa, the Du family has been dealt a heavy blow today. If you are so happy, others might think that you are taking pleasure in their misfortune." In the bamboo forest, a charming girl smiled faintly. Her charming hair was casually tied into a loose bun, with a light purple flower inserted diagonally. She did not wear any makeup, and her red lips were not dyed red. "What are you afraid of? Seeing the Du family suffer, so what if I am happy? Who would dare to be dissatisfied?" The old man smiled. On his skinny and tanned face, his eyes were bright without any turbidity. He looked at the charming girl and said, "That brat is really fierce. I am liking him more and more. It's a pity that you are not moved. If only we could make that brat a member of our Xia family." At that time, that old fellow from the Du family would probably die of indignation. Grandpa, I have already said that he is still a little boy. The girl's beautiful eyes flickered as she smiled sweetly, revealing her cleverness. Cough cough. The old man suddenly coughed. His breathing was disorderly, appearing extremely uncomfortable. His withered chest heaved up and down, as if his ribs would break at any moment. Grandpa, how are you? The girl's expression changed, her face full of worry. It's an old problem. There will be a day when that happens. After the old man coughed a few times, he stabilized his breathing. Then, he looked at the charming girl and said, "Girl, go find that brat tomorrow. Coming to the imperial city is also fate. I want to meet that brat." "All right." The charming girl nodded. She knew what her grandpa meant. It was likely that he did not just want to meet him, but more so for the future of the Xie family. In the night, a figure silently appeared in the Li family residence, then quietly entered the Li family residence and disappeared. In the inner courtyard of the Li family, in an exquisite courtyard. Within a room, a rather heroic middle-aged man and a woman who emitted the aura of a lady from a wealthy family were looking at a delicate and pretty girl. The light in their eyes sighed slightly. "Father, mother, let me go. Don't tell me that you're also going to watch cousin Li Shui fall into the fire pit?" In the room, Zhang Jin sat upright. However, her body was obviously sealed by a restriction placed on her acupoints. She was unable to move. "Shui is my most beloved niece. For the sake of the entire Li family, I have no other choice. Your second uncle is also very upset. It's a pity that the Li family is not strong enough, so he has no choice but to lower his head." The woman looked at Zhang Jin and sighed, "Don't go out and cause trouble. When you attend the wedding tomorrow, I will naturally let you go." Creak. With that, the middle-aged man and the woman pushed open the door and left, leaving Zhang Jin alone in the room. This is troublesome. Is there really no way to change it? Zhang Jin sighed. Her body was restricted, and she couldn't move at all. Even if she wanted to leave the Li family, she couldn't. Suddenly, the door opened slightly, and a figure appeared in the room like a ghost. He was wearing a long black robe, and his face was covered in it. Zhang Jin raised her head and her eyes flickered. "It's me." The black robe was lifted, revealing a purple-robed young man carrying a mysterious broadsword on his back. A small golden macaque was perched on his shoulder. It was Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao. Without any news of Zhang Jin and the fact that Li Yu had sent people to ambush him, Du Xiaofu felt that something was amiss. Thus, he had Xiao Hu, Ouyang Shuang, and Du Xiaoqing wait in the tavern while he sneaked into the Li family with Du Xiaoyao. With Tianlu Academy's emblem on him, it was easy for him to find Zhang Jin. Zhang Jin's appearance was just as Du Xiaofu had expected. Something had indeed happened. "Junior Du, why are you here?" Upon seeing Du Xiaofu, the shock in Zhang Jin's eyes turned into joy. "I guessed that you were in trouble, so I came to take a look." Du Xiaofu undid the seal on Zhang Jin's body and frowned. "What happened?" "Li Yu discovered my intentions. He eavesdropped on my conversation with cousin Li Shui and knew that I was persuading cousin Li Shui to leave. Thus, he informed the elders and sealed me," Zhang Jin said. "How is Li Shui now?" Du Xiaofu asked with a slight frown. "Perhaps, we came for nothing." Zhang Jin sighed. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and helplessness. From Zhang Jin's mouth, Du Xiaofu learned that Zhang Jin had already met Li Shui and explained the purpose of her visit to Li Shui. However, Li Shui had already insisted on compromising. She only asked Zhang Jin to thank Du Xiaofu and Ouyang Shuang for their kindness. In a continuous courtyard, in a beautiful and fragrant girl's room, a charming and seductive figure stood in front of the window. The curves of her body were moving. She raised her head slightly and looked at the crescent moon in the sky. The light in her eyes was faint, making one's heart ache. Creak, the door was pushed open and a figure walked in. The woman did not turn her head. She opened her mouth and looked out of the window. She softly said, Father, I know the Li family's situation. I also know Uncle's difficulties and your reluctance. This is enough. Everything is my choice. I will not blame anyone. Since this matter was caused by me, I should bear the responsibility. Senior Li Shui, it's me. A faint voice sounded. When the enchanting lady heard this, her alluring body trembled as though it had been electrocuted. This caused her originally exquisite and curvaceous body to become even more perfect and alluring at this moment. She immediately turned her head around and a resolute and determined familiar face appeared in front of her eyes. Her tender red lips opened a couple of times before she exclaimed in shock, Junior Du, why have you come? I snuck in. Du Xiaofu shrugged his shoulders. Since it was already so late, he could only sneak in. After Li Shui recovered from her shock, she had already heard about what happened in Tianwu Academy. She looked at Du Xiaofu and pursed her lips into a smile. Even though there was a hint of bitterness in her smile, it was still an extremely charming smile. She said, with your current strength, if you want to force your way in, no one in the Li family will be able to stop you, right? I'm not here to snatch the bride. It won't be good if I force my way in. Du Xiaofu smiled apologetically with an awkward look on his face. If you're here to snatch the bride, I will definitely leave with you without any hesitation. Li Shui looked at Du Xiaofu with her rosy lips slightly pouting. Her gaze trembled and there was a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Du Xiaofu was taken aback. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Pucci, Li Shui chuckled and the anticipation in her eyes disappeared. It was replaced by loneliness as she looked at Du Xiaofu and said, no matter what, thank you for coming. Cousin Zhang Jin has already told me about it and I know the purpose of your visit. However, this matter was caused by me and I have to take responsibility for it. There are thousands of people in the Li family and I can't allow them to be implicated because of me. Have you really made up your mind? Du Xiaofu looked at Li Shui and said, if you want to leave, I can bring you with me. As long as we reach the academy, the Qian family won't be able to do anything to you. Bring me with you. Li Shui looked at Du Xiaofu and her eyes flickered. What will happen to the Li family after I leave? This, Du Xiaofu naturally knew the reason for Li Shui's worry. He didn't know what to say for a moment. After hesitating for a moment, he said to Li Shui, if I tell the Li family, maybe I can help. Junior Du, I know that you have a good reputation in the empire. If you go and find my father and uncle personally, they will have to consider it. They might agree. Li Shui looked at Du Xiaofu and her eyes flickered. But the Li family is in the imperial capital. The foundation of the Li family is in the imperial capital. You can protect me, but what about the entire Li family? The power of the Qian family is not to be underestimated. At that time, I will become the sinner of the Li family. I know Junior Du's strength is tyrannical, but this is the imperial capital where experts are as common as clouds. The foundation of the Qian family is deeper than my Li family and there is another huge monster behind them. All of this was caused by me, so I naturally have to bear the responsibility. Have you really made up your mind? Du Xiaofu sighed. If only you were from the Du household. Everything would be different with just a word from you. A bitter smile appeared on Li Shui's charming face. Du Xiaofu's surname was also Du. If he was from the Du household, just a word from him would be enough to protect the entire Li family. At that time, the Qian family could only obey his orders. Unfortunately, he wasn't from the Du household. For the entire Li family, she had no other choice. Du household. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and said to Li Shui, I'm not from the Du household, but I'm from the World Society. Come with me. If you join the World Society, perhaps it won't be long before you can protect the entire Li family. Du Xiaofu knew that the current strength of the World Society was definitely not weak. With the 6-star Spirit Talisman Master, Medicine King Yi Wuming, and the Eagle King Gong Dao, a Martial King expert, even in the imperial capital, it was an absolute lineup. But Du Xiaofu knew that if he wanted to protect Li Shui, whether it was the World Society or himself, it wouldn't be too big of a problem. No matter how strong the Qian family was, they probably didn't have a king-level expert. Even if there was a king-level expert, there was still Du Shaoqing. But if he wanted to protect the entire Li family, being in the imperial capital, the world society couldn't do it. He also couldn't do it. And all of this, he didn't have any reason to interfere. Everything depended on Li Shui. Chapter 429. World Society. Li Shui smiled, not minding it too much. She turned back and stood quietly by the window. After a long time, she said to Du Xiaofu, "Perhaps this is fate. I can only accept it. Everything happened because of me, so I should bear the responsibility." "Thank you. Everything happened because of me as well." Du Xiaofu sighed. If he hadn't been too heavy-handed, perhaps Li Shui wouldn't have to face such a situation. But even so, Du Xiaofu didn't regret his actions. This was somewhat contradictory, but it wasn't a conflict. "You can't be blamed for this. I've thought about it carefully these past few days. The main fault lies with me. I knew his temper, but I still provoked him. He brought this upon himself. I also have a responsibility that I can't shirk away from." Li Shui smiled bitterly. During this period of time, she had thought about many things. Back then, she didn't have any feelings for Qian Guyu, and she was extremely annoyed by his actions. But no matter what, Qian Guyu had been very attentive to her. The current situation was also caused by her. If she hadn't known about Qian Guyu's personality and intentionally dragged Du Xiaofu into this, perhaps things wouldn't have turned out this way. Li Shui said softly, "Perhaps I also owe Qian Guyu. Now that I've married into the Qian clan, I hope that everything will be resolved." Du Xiaofu didn't say anything else. He didn't know what else to say. A moment later, he bid farewell to Li Shui and turned to leave with Du Xiaoyao. "If you're really here to snatch the bride, then I..." Li Shui's eyes flickered as she watched Du Xiaofu leave. The next morning, when the first ray of morning light broke through the shackles of the clouds in the eastern horizon and was projected onto the enormous imperial city, Dragon City, many people gradually surged out on the empty streets. Clamoring noises rang out, and the enormous city woke up and began a new day. In a room of the Li clan, a middle-aged man stood quietly. He looked at Li Shui with teary eyes and gritted his teeth. "Shui, why don't you just go back to Tianwu Academy? No one can do anything to you there. Father will take care of the Qian clan's matters." "Father, this isn't a grievance. Don't worry, I'm fine," Li Shui said softly. Her eyes revealed a faint smile, but no one could see the sadness hidden in them. Early in the morning, Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, opened his eyes, and Li Shui, editor, "Tennis Shui, what do you plan? Have you thought?" "Oh, Yang Shuang's words. Li Shui. Of course, Li. Du Xiaofu, Li, today is a joyous occasion for the Qian clan. There must be many famous people in the capital. Why don't we go and take a look? I would like to take this opportunity to meet the famous people in the capital. Otherwise, my trip to the capital would have been a waste." Du Xiaofu looked at Yang Shuang with a smile. "Are you really going to the Qian clan?" Yang Shuang stared blankly at Du Xiaofu. She knitted her brows and said, "You should know that if the people from the Qian clan see you, they won't let you off. Today is a joyous occasion for the Qian clan. They shouldn't make things difficult for me. There's no harm in going and taking a look." Du Xiaofu replied. "All right, I'll go with you. I hope that the Qian clan won't end up like the Du clan yesterday." Yang Shuang sighed. She couldn't help but worry. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly and said, "Don't worry, I won't cause any trouble." "Great, we can go and play again. Are we going to attend a wedding?" Du Xiaoqing happily twirled in circles. Her green dress couldn't hide her alluring curves. On her young face, there was a pure and innocent look in her eyes. Who could imagine that such a harmless-looking girl would be terrifying to the extreme once she was angered? Today, the Qian clan was filled with a joyous atmosphere. Large red lanterns were hung up high, embellishing the vast Qian clan. However, within this joyous atmosphere, it was not difficult for one to feel a faint sadness and regret. But no matter what, the joyous occasion for the Qian clan was an extraordinarily lively event for the entire capital. Moreover, the marriage alliance was a similarly large clan, the Li clan. This made the atmosphere even livelier. The Qian clan was originally a first-rate clan within the capital, Dragon City. They had been rising in the capital for a long time. Later on, the younger brother of the Du King married the younger sister of the head of the Qian clan, causing the Qian clan and the Du King to become in-laws. Hence, this caused the status of the Qian clan to rise. They were already vaguely known as the #1 clan below the 8 great king palaces. After this marriage alliance with the Li clan, there was no doubt that the Qian clan would become the #1 clan below the 8 great king palaces. As the sky gradually brightened, the interior of the Qian clan gradually became lively. In the end, it was practically filled with a sea of people. The Qian clan was originally a large faction and there were countless people who came to congratulate them. Although there was a faint sense of helplessness and regret in this joyous occasion, the joyous sound still resounded throughout the sky from early morning. As time passed, the number of guests increased and the joyous sounds became increasingly dense. Today is a joyous occasion for the Qian clan and the Li clan. The marriage alliance between the two clans will undoubtedly increase their strength greatly. In the future, other than the 8 great king palaces, no other faction will be able to deal with the Qian clan and the Li clan. However, I heard that there's a secret behind this marriage alliance. It's said that Changguyu's cultivation was crippled by the terrifying Du Xiaofu in Tianmu Academy and has become a cripple. This matter seems to have something to do with Li Shui from the Li clan. That's why the two clans decided to have this marriage alliance. Du Xiaofu. I heard that the terrifying Du Xiaofu caused a ruckus in the Du King Palace yesterday. Could his arrival in Dragon City be related to Li Shui from the Li clan? If Du Xiaofu really destroyed Qianguyu and appeared in the imperial capital, I'm afraid the Qian family won't let him go. That's not necessarily true. Yesterday, even the experts from the Du King Palace were swept away by Du Xiaofu. What can the Qian clan do? I'm afraid that the terrifying Du Xiaofu doesn't come to the Qian clan. Amidst the jubilant atmosphere, the place was bustling with activity. Among the densely packed guests, there were groups of 3 to 5 people. Some guests had also gathered together and were discussing various things that they had heard about. Around the Qian clan, there were many experts dressed in martial arts attire. Their bodies emitted a bloody aura, and they were all elites of the Qian clan. The weaker cultivators didn't dare to get close to them, and those who were the exceptions didn't dare to speak too loudly. The vast Li clan was grand and majestic. At this moment, there were several figures sitting in the main hall. Changguyu's father, the Qian clan's patriarch, Qian Qian, was personally accompanying him on the wedding day. Qian Qian looked to be in his 50s. He was tall and strong, and as a patriarch of the Qian clan, he was definitely an influential figure in the empire. He had the aura of a superior, which made people feel reverence in their hearts. At the main guest seat in the hall, there was an extraordinarily handsome middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s. He had a dignified appearance and exuded a noble aura. Beside him, there were several burly men and young men who had extraordinary auras. I didn't expect the second master of King Ouyang's mansion to come in person. Your presence brings light to the Qian clan's humble dwelling. Please forgive me if I have neglected you. Qian Qian felt flattered in front of the dignified middle-aged man. He didn't expect that King Ouyang's mansion, which had always been difficult to get close to, would come to congratulate him on his son's wedding. Moreover, the second master of King Ouyang's mansion had come in person. This was a great honor. You're too kind, Patriarch Qian. I came uninvited, please don't be offended. The middle-aged man said indifferently. His gestures were extraordinary. The guests from King Ouyang's mansion have arrived. The guests from King Gu's mansion have arrived. The guests from Ghost King's mansion have arrived. The guests from Wu King's mansion have arrived. The guests from King Guo's mansion have arrived. At this moment, a series of loud shouts suddenly came from outside the hall. Even the voices were trembling. Then, it obviously caused a huge commotion outside. The faces of the people from King Ouyang's mansion changed slightly. At this moment, Qian Qian was undoubtedly the most shocked. His whole body trembled slightly. The Ghost King's mansion, Wu King's mansion, King Guo's mansion, King Gu's mansion, and King Zhang's mansion. These 5 kings' mansions were not people that the Qian clan could make friends with easily. Today, other than King Ouyang's mansion, there were guests from the 5 kings' mansions. How could he not be shocked and delighted? Looks like Patriarch Qian has a lot of guests. The dignified middle-aged man smiled slightly. He was also surprised. Perhaps my son is a classmate of the younger generation from King General's mansion, Wu King's mansion, and the other kings' mansions. That's why they came to congratulate you. Please have a seat, second master. I'll be back soon. Qian stood up and apologized. The guests from the 5 kings' mansions came at the same time. He had to welcome any of them. How could he dare to neglect them? It's okay. I think the bride should be here soon. I'll go out for a walk and wait to meet the bride. The middle-aged man stood up with a smile and planned to go out for a walk. General Bujian Shanhe, Jade Maiden Ling Xian Gu Xinyan, Ghost Child 9 Nether Jr., Netherworld Princess Wu Kei, Heaven Luo Sword Guo Xiaofeng. I didn't expect them to all come. It's said that they were ranked in the top 5 of Tianwu Academy's martial ranking back then. They possess frightening talent and extraordinary strength. Despite their young age, they have already surpassed many seniors. Who would have thought that the Qian clan's wedding would have so many kings attending? It seems like the Qian clan is going to prosper this time. The interior of the Qian family was bustling with activity. There was a commotion among the densely packed well-wishers. Following the arrival of a few extraordinary young men and women in the crowd, the entire festive scene immediately became a little chaotic. In the surroundings, there was a large group of young men and women. Their gazes all landed on the most extraordinary young men and women. If Du Xiaofu was here, he would be able to recognize them from afar. The most extraordinary young men and women were the general, Ghost Child, Gu Xinyan, Wu Kei, and Guo Xiaofeng. The first day of the month, the first day of the book list. Little you, continue to write. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.